During the Chu family gathering, the family head has just declared the competition for choosing the next heir among all his sons. Above all of them, Chu Shu is the least favored. He is the only illegitimate child born to a concubine and has been neglected his entire life, ultimately becoming known as the worthless trash second young master of the family. So naturally, he is looked at with condemning gazes. Despite this, our protagonist shocks everyone by making his intentions clear. He is aiming for the position of family head. Because of this, a servant dares to interrupt him, but as a result, our protagonist beats the living daylight out of the servant, leaving everyone watching in shock. This is because Chu Shu is no longer himself. Our protagonist has reincarnated into this world as the son of the Chu family. In this life, he will not only fight for the position of family head, but he will also take revenge and kill anyone who dares to stand in his path. To understand how this happened, let's shift back to the moment and the day our protagonist died. Apparently, our protagonist, Lin Ye, is one of those rich Chinese young masters from the most prestigious and powerful Ye family. His family are business tycoons, and among his siblings, Lin Ye is an illegitimate son. So naturally, while his older brothers are busy managing the family business and trying to secure the CEO position, our protagonist is busy enjoying the time of his life. This is because there is no way an illegitimate son like him would even qualify to compete for the CEO position. Moments before his death, our protagonist suddenly snaps his fingers, and a maid immediately brings out a gaming helmet. It turns out to be the latest pre-launch edition of a game, and the helmet alone costs around 20 million. Not to mention the game itself is said to be even more challenging than Elden Ring. Of course, it is only natural for Lin Ye's friends, who are also illegitimate sons from other powerful families, to be shocked and openly admit they feel jealous. Nonetheless, our protagonist is eager to see what this version of the game has to offer. The moment he puts on the helmet, Lin Ye immediately hears a message from one of his brothers. His brother calls him a hidden threat and hopes he has a great time in another life. However, his friends remain clueless, not understanding what is happening. But in the very next moment, our protagonist's head suddenly explodes. And that is how he ends up transmigrating into this world. Lin Ye cannot believe his brothers would kill him when he never once competed for power. This makes him reflect on his life and regret not fighting for authority when he had the chance. But at that moment, memories from the host begin to surface. Predictably, the host is also the illegitimate son of a concubine. Because of his status, he is treated poorly and neglected by the family ever since his mother died during childbirth. Chu Shu is weak, and during the battle for the family head position, he sides with his eldest brother out of the 3 brothers he has. This makes his third brother furious, so he frames him and exiles him to the mines. Originally, he is supposed to work there for 3 years, but for some reason the Chu family elders suddenly decide to select a new heir, and even Chu Shu, as an illegitimate son, has the privilege to participate. So this means our protagonist is currently heading back to the Chu family mansion. As he reaches for a sword, our protagonist ponders why his new name feels strangely familiar. The moment he checks his reflection using the sword, everything suddenly clicks into place, causing him to drop the weapon in shock. Apparently, he has entered the world of his favorite game, and the person he possesses just so happens to be the final boss in the newest edition. According to the lore, Chu Shu later becomes known as the greatest villain and demon lord because of all the hardships he suffers due to his family. In the end, the game introduces him as the demon lord who rebuilds the once powerful demon sect from 1,000 years ago while commanding 4 of the strongest warriors in the martial arts world. After reflecting on everything, Lin Ye wonders if he should laugh or cry. After all, he is destined to become the greatest villain in the game, and as the final boss, it is only natural for him to eventually be defeated by the main protagonist. Lin Ye scoffs, wondering if this means he is destined to fail once again just like in his previous life. In his past life, he lived like a sheep and still got killed in the end. Since heaven has given him a second chance, this time he will definitely live for himself and kill anyone who stands in his path. At that moment, his personal maid enters the carriage. She overhears something from outside, so she wonders if our protagonist is all right. Our protagonist carefully looks at her through the original host's memories. She was assigned to him by the biological mother of his third brother. The original Chu Shu was pathetic, believing she had truly been assigned to him by the family and that she even cared about him. Meanwhile, during all the years of his exile, she not only caused trouble with the miners to ruin his reputation and provoke riots, but she also did everything in her power to kill him. With this in mind, Lin Ye casually tells her that he merely dropped the sword. Chu Yue notices that our protagonist seems different, But she still informs him that the main road is difficult to travel because of the rain, so she suggests taking a shortcut through Yuanbao town instead. Hearing this, Chu Shu questions her reasoning because that route is dangerous and filled with bandits. Seeing his refusal, she quickly changes tactics and insists that those stories are merely rumors. If this were the old Chu Shu, he would definitely have fallen for it. However, our protagonist is completely different. Chu Yu becomes shocked by his expression, yet our protagonist simply pinches her cheek gently before happily suggesting that they go through Yuanbao town after all. She breathes a sigh of relief while Chu Shu leaves her to make the arrangements. Chu Yue agrees, but she nearly bites her tongue, thinking our protagonist had noticed something. In the end, she realizes she was only overthinking. Anyone would find it puzzling that our protagonist agrees to travel through such a dangerous route, but the truth is that there is actually something extremely important hidden within that town. This is because our protagonist has played every version of the game, meaning he knows the lore inside and out, and according to his estimation, the main storyline of the first edition has not even begun yet and will only start in the next 20 years. Which means that, right now, a massive opportunity is waiting for him in Yuanbao town. After arriving at Yuanbao town, Chu Yue questions their destination. She points out that the town is nowhere near their hometown, so she naturally wonders why they are wandering around such a backwater place. However, Chu Shu does not respond because he is busy searching for a particular shop. Not long after, he finally finds the secret box shop. Our protagonist recalls from the game lore that 10,000 years ago, a catastrophic event occurred, leading to the destruction of countless great sects. However, before this disaster, the Cataclysm Formation Grandmasters had researched and created special items known as secret boxes. These boxes were used to preserve ancient texts and martial arts techniques. At that time, different sects used different materials and methods to create these secret boxes. Naturally, the more valuable the martial arts technique, the higher the quality of the secret box used to store it. After the destruction of those ancient and powerful sects, countless people began searching for these secret boxes because the contents hidden inside could literally change a person's life. But unfortunately, not every box contained something valuable. In the end, it all became a game of chance. Even with that in mind, our protagonist calmly enters the shop. A bit puzzled, Chu Shu notices that the shop is strangely empty, so he asks the shopkeeper if business has been bad lately. The man sighs and explains that Yuanbao is merely a backwater town. The people who come here can barely afford anything. Not to mention that obtaining a valuable secret box is basically like winning the lottery. However, the shopkeeper confidently states that Chu Shu is clearly different from the poor people in town and can likely afford as many boxes as he wants. He even mentions that he recently acquired a batch from the ruins of the southern barbarian mountains. Hearing this, Chu Shu sinks into his thoughts. Even though the Chu family is one of the top families with inherited martial arts, the original Chu Shu was heavily neglected and never properly guided in cultivation. In simple terms, he is practically weak. Currently, he is only at the body-tempering realm, the lowest realm that every martial artist in the game can reach through brutal physical training. Above this realm are the blood condensation realm and the innate realm, where true masters begin to emerge. If he remembers correctly from the game lore, there was once a servant who purchased a secret box from this very shop and later used its contents to become a grandmaster and establish his own sect. Just as he is thinking about this, another customer suddenly enters the shop, loudly asking the shopkeeper for 2 secret boxes. The shopkeeper immediately recognizes the man. It turns out to be Li Jing. The old man advises Li Jing not to gamble recklessly. He points out that the third young master of the Li family favors and promotes him. If he is smart, he can use that opportunity and his connections to eventually become a manager within the Li household. Scoffing at the advice, Li Jing argues that no matter what position he gains, he will still remain nothing more than a servant of the Li family. But a secret box could completely change his fate. The shopkeeper can only sigh, hoping Li Jing knows what he is doing. Soon he presents Li Jing with 2 random boxes. At that moment, our protagonist suddenly steps forward and calmly announces that he has decided to buy the entire shop. Our protagonist is extremely confident because Li Jing is actually the servant mentioned in the game lore. In other words, one of these secret boxes definitely contains a powerful martial technique. Seeing this, Li Jing immediately tries to argue that he got there first. However, our protagonist casually declares that he already said he wanted everything. If Li Jing has a problem with it, then he can do something about it. Trying to intimidate him, Li Jing proudly states that he belongs to the Li family, one of the great prestigious clans of Tongzhou. Chu Shu merely shakes his head at the fool and points out that Li Jing is only a servant, yet he dares to use the Li family's name for his own gain. Then he coldly asks if the man does not know his place. And just like that, our protagonist's escorts immediately step forward. Seeing this, Li Jing instantly understands the situation and backs down. Meanwhile, our protagonist watches him carefully and finally realizes that with Li Jing's cowardly personality, it is no wonder he only became a mid-level boss in the game, despite obtaining such a powerful technique. But unfortunately for him, he will not get that chance this time. Li Jing can only helplessly watch as all the secret boxes are taken away. Aside from the humiliation, he feels as though something extremely important has just been stolen from him. As a result, he silently swears to get revenge on our protagonist. Later, inside an inn, our protagonist wastes no time opening the secret boxes. After opening countless useless ones, he finally strikes gold. Inside one of the boxes, Chu Shu discovers a record crystal. Looking at it closely, he realizes it contains a Taoist secret manual known as the Innate Arts, a fourth transformation cultivation technique. No wonder Li Jing was originally destined to become a grandmaster so easily. Our protagonist explains that in the game, techniques are divided into 9 transformations. The first 3 transformations are considered the lowest levels, though they are still valuable enough to serve as inheritance techniques for small sects. The 4th to 6th transformations are regarded as treasures powerful enough to establish entire sects. As for the 7th to 9th transformations, they are legendary techniques only found within the strongest sects in the world. However, our protagonist admits that there are actually 2 levels above even the 9th transformation, but those are currently useless to him. Still, this innate art is more than enough. It can cleanse his body and completely reshape his foundation. In simple terms, it is a heaven-defying shortcut with no age restrictions. With this technique in his hands, our protagonist now has a real chance to survive and potentially dominate the Chu family in the future. And now he is truly looking forward to discovering what lies inside the remaining boxes. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Li Jing respectfully greets a large man. The man is Li Tong, the leader of the Li family caravan. He casually invites Li Jing to join him for a good time. In response, Li Jing anxiously explains that he was robbed. Even after mentioning the Li family's name, he was completely ignored. This immediately sparks Li Tong's interest, and he demands to know exactly what happened. After dismissing the courtesans around him, Li Jing begins narrating the entire incident. After listening carefully, Li Tong ponders the matter for a moment. He refuses to allow anyone associated with the Li family, even a mere servant, to be bullied so openly. As a result, he orders Li Jing to send someone to investigate the identity of the troublemaker. Half an hour later, a servant returns with the results. The man reports that the person involved just so happens to be someone from the Chu family. Hearing this, Li Tong immediately notes that things have become troublesome. Among the 3 great families of Tongzhou, the Shen family ranks first, the Chu family second, and the Li family last. Li Jing can only grit his teeth, because even if the 3rd young master of the Li family personally arrived, there might still be nothing they could do. Feeling puzzled, Li Tong wonders aloud why someone from the prestigious Chu family would be wandering around such a backwater town in the first place. Naturally, he asks about the person's identity. But the moment he learns that the man is Chu Shu, Li Tong immediately changes his mind and declares that he will personally handle the matter. Anxiously, Li Jing reminds him that Chu Shu is still the 2nd young master of the Chu family. However, Li Tong simply laughs and explains that Chu Shu's reputation is so terrible that even a servant is considered more respectable than him. On top of that, he is known for being cowardly and weak. Although Li Jing appears reassured on the surface, deep down, after personally meeting our protagonist, he cannot help but feel a trace of doubt. Meanwhile, on the other side, our protagonist is busy cultivating. Apparently, he has also discovered another martial technique from one of the secret boxes. This one is a blade technique known as the Sleeve Azure Dragon, a 2nd transformation martial art that is surprisingly easy to master. Just then, our protagonist suddenly hears a commotion outside. The ones disturbing the peace turn out to be Li Tong and his men. Li Tong loudly demands that Chu Shu come out, return all the secret boxes, and apologize to Li Jing. Otherwise, he will face the consequences. In response, our protagonist calmly walks downstairs and asks what exactly they plan to do if he refuses. One of Li Tong's men immediately sneers at him, mocking how pathetic he is before foolishly threatening to kill Chu Shu. Our protagonist barely reacts to the provocation. In the very next moment, he instantly unleashes the sleeve Azure Dragon technique. Li Tong and Li Jing are left utterly shocked as they watch the man collapse to the ground. Meanwhile, Chu Shu coldly informs them that he absolutely hates being threatened before openly challenging all of them to come at him. The entire time, Chu Yue has been watching. She cannot believe that her supposedly useless and talentless young master just killed someone. Li Tong mirrors the same expression before fury quickly overtakes him. Our boy slowly begins approaching him. In the blink of an eye, our protagonist suddenly appears in front of Li Tong. Placing a knife close to Li Tong's neck, our protagonist calls him a fool for causing trouble. He reminds Li Tong that even if he does not receive favor from his family, he is still the young master of the Chu family. Only now does the foolish man realize how stupid his actions were from the very beginning. Trying to harm our protagonist is equivalent to slapping the Chu family in the face. However, to his shock, our protagonist hands Li Tong the knife and tells him to hold it. When he hesitates, our protagonist stares coldly, making it clear he is not going to repeat himself. This forces Li Tong to take the knife. However, to everyone's shock, our protagonist orders Li Tong to kill him. Seeing the group's reaction, our protagonist even decides to help Li Tong. Because of this, Li Tong drops the knife while apologizing and admitting he was wrong. Chu Shu repeatedly slaps him, pointing out that he already gave Li Tong a chance, yet he refused. He then orders him to take the corpse of his subordinate and leave. Chu Yue watches everything unfold, wondering if this is truly the same young master she knows. The moment they step out of danger, Li Tong immediately becomes furious. As a result, he vents his frustration by slapping the foolish Li Jing for instigating him and swears to deal with him, even if he is favored by the third young master. Later that night, a servant is summoned. The man respectfully bows and asks why our protagonist called for him. Our protagonist looks at Gao Bei with a hint of sadness, thinking about how this loyal man has been unfairly mistreated. So our protagonist asks if he has any complaints, considering he was framed, exiled from the family to the mines, and even dragged Gao Bei down with him. The man responds negatively, noting that it is simply his duty to serve his master. Because of this, Chu Shu points out how badly Gao Bei has been treated. His peers have all been promoted, yet he still remains a poor guard. He asks if the man is not even a little resentful. Gao Bei explains that he is clumsy and stupid, so naturally he is satisfied with his current position. Our protagonist stares at him carefully. His expression makes it clear that the fool cannot deceive him. He reassures Gao Bei not to worry because, after all, both of them are the same. However, that also means they can rise together. Of course, Gao Bei immediately agrees. However, our protagonist points out that he still does not understand. People like them need to take risks if they want to climb higher in life. With this in mind, our protagonist orders him to head to Shangmang Mountain outside Yuanbao town to deliver a message to the bandit leader. Our protagonist also promises to make Gao Bei his personal confidant, causing Gao Bei to fall deep into thought. After realizing the young master is no longer the same person as before, he decides to take the gamble. With that, our protagonist hands him a sealed letter while instructing him not to make any mistakes. Our protagonist reveals a wicked grin, noting that he has already laid the trap, and if Chen Yue mistakenly schemes against him, then the outcome is already obvious. The next scene takes us to the following day. While heading back home, Chu Yue asks about Gao Bei, to which our protagonist replies that he went ahead to inform the family about his arrival. Hearing this, the girl can only sneer inwardly, thinking our protagonist will never reach home alive. However, she becomes shocked when our protagonist suddenly asks whether they might encounter bandits. Of course, she pretends to be frightened, insisting he should not say something so ominous, while our protagonist calmly points out that unexpected things can happen at any time. However, she playfully dismisses it as her young master joking around. Almost at the same moment, the carriage suddenly halts. Our protagonist immediately realizes the bandits have arrived exactly as predicted. The bandit leader, Lian Lozan, asks whether the people inside the carriage need a personal invitation to come out. To everyone's shock, our protagonist actually steps out and remains unusually calm as he addresses Lian Lozan. He points out that they only have money and no goods because this is not a merchant caravan. Hearing this, Lian Laosan asks whether that money can save our protagonist's life. From inside the carriage, Chu Yue watches with a smile as our protagonist insists that the bandit should take the money and spare his life. Since the man already knows his identity, the bandit leader will definitely benefit from helping him in the future. The bandit responds with a mocking sneer, saying that young Master Chu is useless and worthless. Rather than taking chances with him, he would rather preserve his reputation by killing him. Watching this, Chu Yue can barely contain her joy. She thinks to herself that sending Lian Lozan to assassinate our protagonist was indeed the right decision. Chu Shu can already tell the man is beyond reasoning. If that is the case, then he will not hold back, and just like that, he suddenly charges forward in a flash. The bandit leader is immediately caught off guard. However, he quickly recovers and swings his broadsword at our protagonist. In that instant, Chu Shu realizes that Lian Laosan is not actually a warrior because the man possesses no internal energy and is relying purely on brute strength. In addition, his fighting style is incredibly wild. That means our protagonist still has a chance. Lian Lozan cannot believe our protagonist actually deflected his sword strike. Regaining his composure, he swings his broadsword again. As expected, our protagonist quickly dodges once more. Soon, it turns into a game of cat and mouse. Yet he is unable to land a single hit on our protagonist. Watching from the side, the other bandits enjoy the scene as they laugh and mock our protagonist for constantly dodging in such a pathetic manner. Contrary to them, their boss is becoming increasingly furious because he still cannot land a single strike. As a result, he begins shouting and gradually loses his composure. Our protagonist notices this and realizes it is his chance. With that, he pulls out his dagger and uses the sleeve Azure Dragon technique. Lian Lozan narrowly dodges in time. However, Chu Shu is not finished. In that brief opening, he slashes at Lian Lozan and injures him in the process. As a result, the bandit leader is forced to create distance while his subordinates anxiously check on him. In Lian Laozan's mind, he realizes that if he had not dodged in time, our protagonist might have taken his life. Our protagonist also thinks to himself that he has not practiced the sleeve Azure Dragon technique enough. Otherwise, Lian Laozan would never have been able to dodge. Seeing things reach this point, Lian Lozan loudly gives the order to kill. And just like that, the entire group charges toward our protagonist with their weapons drawn. Suddenly, a voice interrupts them, asking who gave the idiot permission to kill without consulting him first. The newcomers just happen to be another group of bandits. Their leader, Ma Kuo, notes that he heard there was a huge score waiting here and insists they share the pie. Chu Yue expresses surprise upon seeing the newcomers, so she naturally assumes they were arranged by our protagonist's stepmother. However, judging from Chu Shu's expression, that clearly is not the case. Lian Laozan immediately becomes furious at Ma Kuo, pointing out that this is his territory. Ma Kuo does not deny it, but he explains that Lian Laozan has constantly interfered with his business time and time again, so it is only natural for him to retaliate. With that, he attacks Lian Laozan with his sword. Already injured from his clash with our protagonist, Lian Laozan hurriedly raises his weapon to block. Unfortunately, his sword is instantly knocked out of his hand. The moment this happens, he immediately tries to flee, thinking that a wise man knows when to retreat. However, Ma Kuo has no intention of letting him escape. Lian Laozan fails to react in time. As a result, he is cleanly severed in half from the waist down. While Ma Kuo gives the order to kill the rest of Lian Laozan's men, our protagonist can already tell that he is a genuine martial arts practitioner, unlike Lian Laozan, who is merely self-taught. With that, our protagonist sincerely thanks him for helping him. However, Ma Kuo tries to twist the situation, demanding to know what makes our protagonist think he came to save him. But at that moment, Gao Bei suddenly appears, grateful that he made it in time. Apparently, this was the task assigned to him by our protagonist. Since Ma Kuo already received his letter, Chu Shu immediately makes a proposal. Killing him might earn Ma Kuo a few thousand taels of silver, but sparing him would ensure he receives refined ore to replace the scraps of metal they currently call weapons. Having already read the contents of the letter, Ma Kuo falls into deep thought as he carefully considers the proposal. While he does so, Chu Shu glances at the dead bandit leader and inwardly notes that all of this was the work of his stepmother, the second wife of his father. Even though he is merely an illegitimate son with no real chance of inheriting the family position, she still did not hesitate to eliminate him. And of course, Chu Yue also played a role in all of this. That is precisely why Chu Shu made his own arrangements. If his stepmother could pay bandits to kill him, then he could also pay bandits to protect him. After weighing our protagonist's offer, Ma Kuo expresses doubt because refined ore is extremely valuable to the Chu family. To this, Our protagonist calmly agrees, but points out that the family already wanted him dead and even exiled him, meaning he has no reason to care about their interests anymore. That is why he is willing to offer the refined ore at a cheap price. Ma Kuo admits that every great family has its own internal troubles, but Chu Shu is surprisingly straightforward. Before leaving, Ma Kuo tells our protagonist to come find him if he ever needs anything. He even offers discounted prices if Chu Shu ever wants family members or friends eliminated. Our protagonist notes that the man truly has quite the personality. Still, he realizes he only survived this time because of Gao Bei. However, now it is finally time to deal with Chu Yue. Just look at the grin spreading across our protagonist's face. Speaking of her, Chu Yue begins sweating profusely after realizing her arrangements to kill our protagonist completely failed. The moment Chu Shu enters the carriage, she immediately drops to her knees and puts on the appearance of a frightened little girl. Chu Shu decides to play along while inwardly thinking that this wench truly knows how to act. So when he asks whether she is scared because her plan to kill him failed, she insists her master must be joking and asks why she would ever be disappointed. Chu Shu instantly drops the act and grabs her by the neck, asking whether she truly thinks he is a fool. He coldly warns her to start talking if she does not want to die. Struggling to breathe, she begs him to let go and promises to tell him everything. Our protagonist releases her and demands an explanation. Chu Yue then reveals her mistress's plot to kill him simply because he once supported his eldest brother, and they feared he might become a problem in the future. In addition, she explains that her mistress has already secured the trust of his fourth brother. At this moment, our protagonist gives some quick context regarding the Chu family. His father, Chu Zongguang, has 4 wives. The first wife is the main wife, and her son is his eldest brother, Chu Kai. The second wife is his stepmother, Chu Yue's mistress, and the mother of his second brother and third son, Chu Sheng. Lastly comes the third wife and her son, his fourth brother, Chu Shang. As we already know, Chu Shu's own mother was merely a concubine who died during childbirth, making him the second son by birth but still illegitimate. Because of this, the original Chu Shu chose to support his eldest brother and the main wife since he naturally assumed Chu Kai would eventually inherit the position of family head. However, when Chu Shu was falsely accused and framed by Chu Sheng, his eldest brother did absolutely nothing to help him. Our protagonist thinks about how the original Chu Shu was just like him in his previous life. Having been born as an illegitimate child, he naturally gave up on fighting for power. But this time, things are going to be different. Not only will he seize the family head position, but he will also use the Chu family's resources to grow stronger. Next, our protagonist asks whether Chu Yue possesses any evidence proving that this assassination plot came from his stepmother. She shakes her head, explaining that her mistress directly communicated with the trusted confidant who contacted the bandits, so naturally she has no evidence. Now completely terrified, she throws herself at our protagonist's feet and begs him to spare her life. When our protagonist agrees and says he does not harm women, she finally breathes a sigh of relief, thinking she has escaped danger. But in the very next second, our protagonist violently snaps her neck. He wonders aloud how the girl could possibly be so naive. She literally got caught acting as a spy and still expected to be spared. The next scene takes us 7 days later to Wei County in Tongzhou Prefecture, where the Chu family mansion is located. The moment our protagonist arrives at the residence, the first person he sees is his stepmother, the second wife. Looking at her, our protagonist explains how she comes from an influential martial arts family. 20 years ago, his father's marriage to her helped him establish himself firmly within Tongzhou Prefecture. Knowing this woman is extremely ruthless, our protagonist happily greets her, while shamelessly flattering her appearance. Meanwhile, she wonders why he is still alive, and whether the useless Chu Yue failed such a simple mission by allowing our protagonist to take the dangerous route safely. Nonetheless, she responds without the slightest warmth, and immediately asks Chu Shu about Chu Yue. Our protagonist shamelessly claims that the girl was too weak to handle him in bed, so she died. He even casually suggests that his stepmother send him another maid. She immediately narrows her eyes. If Chu Yue is truly dead, then perhaps our protagonist is indirectly warning her that he already knows about the assassination attempt. Not to mention, this Chu Shu is completely different from the timid boy who never dared look her in the eye before. As she leaves, she tells Chu Shu to come inside since the family and his father are already waiting. The moment our protagonist enters, he respectfully greets the entire family. his father notices his return. Inwardly, our protagonist explains that his father is considered a powerhouse who overshadowed the Li family, a clan that had dominated Tongzhou Prefecture for centuries. Despite his youthful appearance, our protagonist reveals that the man is actually in his 50s. This is because he has already reached the innate realm, where vital energy and blood become fully condensed. Normally, his father never concerns himself with family matters, because he is an obsessed cultivator. Unfortunately, despite his talent, he has failed to make any significant progress over the past 20 years. Anyways, our protagonist's father begins the family meeting by announcing that the time has finally come to choose a successor. After hearing this, the first wife immediately speaks up, explaining that there is no need for such a meeting because her son is the eldest and should naturally inherit the position of future family head. However, our protagonist's stepmother quickly counters, pointing out that the Chu family is not the imperial family where the eldest child automatically inherits everything. To this, the third wife, clearly acting as her accomplice, agrees and adds that it would be far better if Chu Zongguang personally decided which son deserves the position. If that is the case, Chu Zongguang declares that all of his sons will be given control over different parts of the family business for 1 year. Whoever shows the greatest progress after that period will inherit the position of family head. Hearing this, only the second and third wives agree with Chu Shu's father. Chu Shu merely scoffs inwardly. Even the family elders do not dare go against his father's wishes. On the other side are the first wife and her son, Chu Kai. Both mother and son possess arrogant personalities and even dare to talk back to their father. It is no wonder the man dislikes them. Meanwhile, his stepmother is ruthless and calculating, a cunning fox. In contrast, her son, Chu Sheng, is far less capable and cannot even hide his own weakness. Finally, there is the third wife. On the surface, she appears intelligent and uninterested in the family head position. In reality, she is simply careful not to reveal her ambitions. After all, Chu Shu's father likes her more, and he also favors her son, Chu Sheng, the most. However, the strangest of them all is his father. The man has never shown interest in family matters, so Chu Shu naturally assumes he does not care much about choosing an heir. As expected, the first wife turns to Chu Shu, relying on his past loyalty. The old Chu Shu would have sided with her and opposed his father's decision regarding the heir. But to everyone's shock, Chu Shu stands up and clearly states that he supports his father's wishes. Both the first and second wives are stunned by his reaction. Immediately, Chu Kai, Chu Shu's elder brother, speaks up angrily, demanding to know what nonsense this is and insisting Chu Shu correct himself. Chu Shu immediately snaps back, pointing out that his brother is not even the head of the family yet. Yet he dares to act so arrogantly in front of everyone. If the day ever comes he becomes head, Chu Shu does not even need to explain what will happen to the Chu family. Chu Kai instantly becomes furious, but their father interrupts, ordering him to be quiet. He declares that nothing will change his decision and the matter is settled. Seeing this development, Chu Shu calmly requests that his father allocate him more business responsibilities. He has been managing the mines for years, and even his father knows he cannot make progress under the current restrictions. Chu Zongguang never expected his son to suddenly become so ambitious. Meanwhile, his three wives interpret this bold declaration as Chu Shu aiming for the heir position. At that moment, one of the elders, the chief manager, steps forward and points out that the mining area already belongs to the Chu family business, meaning Chu Shu should not push his luck. In response, Chu Shu gestures for the man to come closer, saying he has something to tell him. Manager Liu approaches, still maintaining his arrogance, unaware of the line he is crossing. Without wasting time, Chu Shu suddenly punches him in the stomach, making him cough blood. And he does not stop there. Chu Shu continues beating him mercilessly. The rest of the family can only watch in horror as the assault continues. Just as his stepmother wonders if Chu Shu has gone mad, his father erupts in rage, demanding to know if Chu Shu dares disrespect him in front of everyone. Only then does Chu Shu stop. He calmly wonders when a mere servant began speaking so freely to a young master of the family. He even questions whether his year of absence and his father's seclusion has made the servants forget their place. Chu Shu remarks that his father is too kind. If he had been at the mines with him, that servant would have died without even knowing what happened. He is not as merciful as his father. The man cannot argue. Although Manager Liu is connected to the first wife's family, he is still just a servant. The father realizes his seclusion has indeed caused some servants to forget their place. To avoid losing face, Chu Zongguang punishes Chu Shu by deducting 3 months of his salary, using it to cover manager Lu's medical recovery. Chu Shu respects his father's decision, but still insists he cannot survive on only mine management if he is expected to compete in the succession battle. Now Chu Zongguang is cornered. He admits inwardly that he never intended for Chu Shu to participate in the succession battle in the first place, but refusing him now would be an open admission. At that moment, the first wife suddenly speaks up, pointing out how ridiculous this is and emphasizing that Chu Shu has just assaulted someone in front of the entire family. In response, Chu Zongguang coldly asks what she expects him to do. She immediately falls silent. As a result, he grants Chu Shu authority over the travel caverns. Chu Shu respectfully bows and thanks his father. However, in his mind, he mocks the first wife and her son. Despite her powerful background, she constantly argues with his father, while her son is completely useless. In simple terms, they are already finished. Just like that, the family meeting comes to an end, and Chu Zongguang dismisses everyone. As they leave, the second wife cannot help but stare at Chu Shu. At first, she believed her main opponent would be the first wife, but she never expected Chu Shu to change so much in just 1 year. Later, in the second madam's residence, Chu Sheng immediately asks his mother about the people she arranged to kill Chu Shu. The woman admits she miscalculated and underestimated him. Still, she reassures her son not to panic. After Chu Shu's actions at the meeting, there is no way he will become the successor. The first wife and her son are already a lost cause, and Chu Sheng is too young. That leaves Chu Sheng as the most suitable candidate. When her son mentions the caravan personnel, she shows a wicked smile. Those people are under her control, so she believes Chu Shu will not be able to influence a single one of them. The next scene shifts to the Chu family pharmacy. Chu Shu enters with Gao Bei. It turns out he has come to collect his share of cultivation resources, something he has neglected for years. Gao Bei points this out, but Chu Shu simply replies that things have changed. As expected, one of the workers greets him with a contemptuous expression, mocking the trash young master for showing up at the pharmacy. The man becomes even more arrogant when he learns from Gao Bei that Chu Shu has come to collect his resources, which have been taken by Chu Kai all this time. Slightly irritated, Chu Shu asks if he ever gave permission for his resources to be handed over to Chu Kai. The foolish servant replies that if he has a problem, he should take it up with Chu Kai. Chu Shu is about to teach him a lesson. Unfortunately, at that moment, the manager arrives and immediately slaps his subordinate. He shouts, asking if the man's head is made of iron to dare speak to the second young master like that. The worker tries to respond, but this only makes the manager even angrier as he asks if the fool is tired of living. Turning respectfully to Chu Shu, the manager begs for forgiveness, explaining that the worker was simply ignorant. As compensation, he even offers blood condensation pills and other cultivation resources. Chu Shu leaves after warning that it must not happen again, causing the manager to breathe a sigh of relief. Still confused, the worker asks why he was slapped. The manager replies it was for his own good. The worker is shocked as the manager explains that if he had not intervened in time, Chu Shu would have beaten him so badly that he would be paying his medical bills. He further warns him never to offend Chu Shu again, because the Chu Shu they see now is completely different from before. The next scene takes us to a shabby residence that belongs to our protagonist. Inside, Gao Bei can't help but talk about how amazing our protagonist was back at the medicine hall, but he simply brushes it off before seriously adding that fear is what truly makes people respect someone. Hearing this, Gao Bei scratches his head and admits he doesn't understand. Our protagonist agrees, pointing out that if Gao Bei truly understood such things, there is no way he would still remain a mere servant after all these years. Now serious once again, our protagonist thinks to himself that when it comes to martial arts, talent and comprehension both play major roles. Since he is currently lacking in both departments, he decides to focus entirely on perseverance instead. With that, our protagonist uses the medicine and pills he obtained from the pharmacy, noting that the manager was clever enough to immediately solve the issue by offering him even more resources. With these supplies, our protagonist believes he can gather enough energy to cultivate through his innate art. In addition, our protagonist reveals that cultivating this innate art is far superior to ordinary techniques because the more one trains, the stronger their internal energy becomes. After an entire day of cultivation, our protagonist can already feel the results and decides it is finally time to practice with the sword. Before beginning cultivation earlier, he had instructed Gao Bei to prepare wooden stakes for him. Our protagonist moves like lightning as he swings his sword. Apparently, this itself is part of the training for the Sleeve Azure Dragon technique. After the session, Gao Bei enters with tea and some news. It turns out he has learned that the travel caravan managers and leaders are all people connected to his stepmother, meaning it will be extremely difficult for his young master to move forward smoothly. When our protagonist asks how he discovered this information, Gao Bei explains that he overheard it from the maidservants working for his stepmother. After hearing this, our protagonist shows a faint smile. Not only is this wench trying to make his life difficult, but she also wants the caravan personnel to humiliate him as well. Because of this, he informs Gao Bei that they will be heading to Shangmang Mountain the following day to find Ma Kuo. Seeing Gao Bei's shocked expression, Chu Shu tells him not to worry because bandits do not eat people. Besides, Ma Kuo will definitely become a useful helping hand. The following day, our protagonist finally meets Ma Kuo. Before revealing anything, he first suggests that Ma Kuo send his men away, but the man shakes his head, saying his subordinates are like brothers to him. Getting straight to the point, our protagonist states that Ma Kuo is not truly a bandit. Ma Kuo laughs slightly before asking that if he is not a bandit, then what else could he possibly be? The moment our protagonist mentions that Ma Kuo is actually an outlaw and a member of the 36 Outlaws of the North, his face immediately pales in shock. Without hesitation, Ma Kuo suddenly attacks our protagonist, but the strike is effortlessly dodged. Closing the distance instantly, our protagonist stops his dagger right at Ma Kuo's neck. He immediately warns Ma Kuo to order his men to stand down. He notes that even if Ma Kuo is hiding his identity, it will not be long before Northern Yan places a bounty on his head. Naturally, Ma Kuo asks how our protagonist knows who he really is. Our protagonist explains that for a bandit, Ma Kuo fights with an orthodox martial style completely unlike ordinary outlaws. Not to mention, he once used the word Killian, a term directly associated with the Killian Iron Cavalry, which just so happens to be among the 36 Outlaws of the North. After hearing all this, Ma Kuo admits that our protagonist is truly impressive. Of course, our protagonist only knows all this because of the game's lore. He explains that around a decade ago, Northern Yan fell into chaos, causing the Outlaws of the North to rise to power. They even became bold enough to plunder the imperial court itself. However, Northern Yan later recovered and joined forces with Northern Snow City, a powerful sect. The outlaws were either killed or crippled during the suppression. According to the game, the only place the surviving remnants fled to was Wei County. With that out of the way, Ma Kuo demands to know what our protagonist wants after exposing his identity. Our protagonist calmly tells him that he knows the whereabouts of the Killian Iron Cavalry's leader, the red-faced heavenly king Pang Hu, who turns out to be Ma Kuo's true boss. Hearing this, Ma Kuo immediately assumes our protagonist is lying. This is why our protagonist explains that he needs to meet Ma Kuo's superior personally. Only then can the truth be verified. With that being the case, Ma Kuo decides to lead our protagonist onward, though he informs him that reaching their boss in the northern part of the mountain will take several days. The scene then shifts to a bandit stronghold located deep within northern Shangmang Mountain. Apparently, there are several strongholds hidden throughout the mountain range. Ma Kuo asks our protagonist to wait while he reports to his superior. Not long afterward, a man enters. Ma Kuo introduces him as Han Bao, his boss and the personal bodyguard of the Killian Iron Cavalry's leader. The moment he arrives, our protagonist immediately gets straight to business, while noticing that Han Bao is in the blood condensation realm, meaning he is far stronger than him. As expected, Han Bao does not believe his claims either, and even threatens to kill our protagonist if he is lying. In response, our protagonist tells him to head toward the desolate mountain in Liaodong County of the North. There, the leader of the Killian Iron Cavalry is secretly recovering from the injuries he suffered after clashing with the imperial court. Seeing their shocked expressions, our protagonist insists they send someone to investigate. The scout will even discover the Killian Iron Cavalry's symbol there. Our protagonist honestly did not expect these tiny details from the game to become so useful. After hearing this, Han Bao decides to send someone to verify the information. At the same time, he asks what our protagonist wants in exchange. Rather than answering directly, our protagonist first asks what Han Bao plans to do after finding his boss. Han Bao replies that it is only natural for him to gather the entire stronghold and reunite with their leader. Because of this, our protagonist points out that Pang Hu is still recovering. Gathering too many people around him would only attract attention and increase the risk of exposure. Instead, Han Bao should focus on accumulating money and cultivation resources to support his leader's recovery. Han Bao finds this suggestion reasonable, but he points out that our protagonist still has not revealed what he wants in return. In response, our protagonist calmly states that he wants to cooperate with Han Bao to make serious money. Now Han Bao becomes extremely interested and asks him to explain the details. Chu Shu begins by pointing out how oversaturated the bandit business has become. There are simply too many bandits operating in the region, causing caravans to abandon the area entirely and take alternate routes instead. Han Bao listens carefully as our protagonist explains that this situation only exists because there are no rules. He proposes that instead of robbing caravans outright, Han Bao should establish order by collecting commissions and protecting the caravans for the remainder of their journey. However, Han Bao points out that doing such a thing would make him the enemy of every other bandit in the mountains. This leads Chu Shu to ask whether he is afraid. Han Bao immediately responds in the negative, explaining that the only reason he has remained passive until now is because he himself was injured during the clash with the imperial court. Our protagonist is secretly shocked by this revelation. It is clear he has underestimated Han Bao's true strength. Regardless, Han Bao admits that our protagonist has given him an excellent idea and once again asks what he wants in exchange. Our protagonist states the obvious. He wants the Chu family caravan to pass safely through Shangmang Mountain without interference. However, he also wants Han Bao to personally kill someone for him. Han Bao agrees immediately and asks for more details regarding the target. Our protagonist explains that when the time comes, he will send the information beforehand. Han Bao bursts into laughter. At that moment, our protagonist casually adds that Han Bao should rob the caravan as well, and simply consider it a greeting gift. Instantly, Han Bao is stunned and wonders aloud if our protagonist really just told him to rob the caravan. In response, our protagonist calmly clarifies that the caravan belongs to the Chu family, not to him personally. Boss Han Bao agrees, though inwardly he cannot help but think that our protagonist is truly ruthless for targeting his own family. With that, our protagonist ends the conversation, noting that he will send the necessary information in advance through a carrier pigeon. Back at the Chu family residence, workers are busy loading the caravan. Enter our furious protagonist, who immediately demands to know who gave them permission to depart. The manager quickly steps forward to greet him respectfully, only for our protagonist to coldly ask whether he is the person in charge. Putting on a flattering smile, the manager hurriedly shakes his head and points out that it is our protagonist who is truly in charge. As a result, our protagonist repeats his earlier question while also asking about the travel plans, operational costs, and expected profits. The manager casually brushes aside the interrogation, explaining that he already received permission from the family lord, our protagonist's father. He confidently assures him that nothing will happen and boldly declares that if any problem occurs, he is willing to accept punishment. At this point, our protagonist merely laughs inwardly, hoping the man will not regret his actions later. Meanwhile, the manager mistakes this reaction as understanding and secretly looks down on our protagonist like a fool. After all, he has managed caravans for years without incident. Regardless, our protagonist simply wishes him luck. The moment the caravan departs, our protagonist immediately orders Gao Bei to inform Han Bao. Later, while traveling, the caravan members begin discussing our protagonist among themselves. One of the men expresses concern that the manager may have offended him, noting that our protagonist has become completely different recently. The manager agrees but casually points out that they only answer to Chu Sheng, our protagonist's second brother. His companion nods but still wonders if he is not afraid of retaliation. The manager confidently replies that the Chu family has rules, meaning our protagonist cannot touch him no matter what. Even so, the other man cannot shake his uneasiness and admits he keeps having a bad feeling about all of this. At that moment, the manager reminds everyone that if they encounter bandits, they should abandon the cargo immediately and prioritize saving their own lives first. Eventually, night falls, and the manager decides to set up camp inside a sizable cave. Unbeknownst to him, the entire group has just stepped directly into our protagonist's trap. The moment bandits appear, the manager immediately shouts for everyone to run, causing the caravan members to scatter in panic. Unfortunately for him, Ma Kuo is already waiting nearby. Only then does the manager realize this was a carefully prepared ambush. Ma Kuo calmly agrees before passing along our protagonist's message to him. At that moment, the poor man finally realizes his mistake, but it is already far too late. As a result, Ma Kuo kills him instantly. With that taken care of, Ma Kuo orders the men to open the cargo and see what kind of greeting gift our protagonist has left for them. News of the caravan hijacking soon reaches the Chu family household. On the way to the main hall, Chu Sheng, our protagonist's second brother, wonders aloud to his mother if all of this could possibly be our protagonist's doing. His mother shakes her head, believing our protagonist does not possess the capability to hire bandits. Even so, she insists that her son remains silent until they obtain actual evidence. Inside the main hall, the surviving workers have just finished reporting everything to our protagonist's father. Our protagonist's father clearly has no interest in business matters and is practically ready to dismiss everyone and return to seclusion before our protagonist suddenly speaks up. He points out that the caravan crew is now frightened and leaderless. Because of this, he wants to personally lead them through Shangmeng Mountain once again. Naturally, everyone is stunned. Defying Chu Zongguang's orders is one thing, but willingly volunteering for what looks like certain death is pure madness. Suppressing his annoyance, our protagonist's father demands to know what exactly he means. He points out that our protagonist has no experience escorting caravans and questions whether he is simply trying to stir up trouble. Hearing this, our protagonist calmly explains that someone needs to take control of the situation immediately. Furthermore, they cannot afford delays, so as a direct descendant of the Chu family, it is only natural for him to shoulder the responsibility. As usual, Chu Zongguang realizes that our protagonist is correct. In fact, he is surprised by when exactly his son develops such a strong sense of responsibility. With that, he grants our protagonist permission to lead the caravan personally while warning him to remain careful. Our protagonist respectfully thanks him for the opportunity. Meanwhile, Chu Sheng can only scoff inwardly, convinced that his brother has completely lost his mind by volunteering for such a dangerous task. The scene then shifts outside. As expected, wherever news spreads, gossiping maids are never far away. The caravan workers feel helpless after abandoning their comrades during the attack, so naturally they lack the confidence to stop the maids from talking behind their backs. Just then, our protagonist arrives and loudly orders the men to prepare for departure toward the state of Yan. Instead of obedience, he is met with endless complaints and excuses. At that moment, our protagonist realizes just how foolish his father has been in certain matters. The man focuses entirely on martial training while neglecting the family business to a dangerous extent. Furious, our protagonist shouts at the workers for making excuses and demands that anyone who is truly injured step forward immediately. Of course, the men instantly fall silent. This only makes our protagonist even angrier. The Chu family pays these cowards 10 times more than ordinary laborers, yet they still behave like this. Because of this, our protagonist orders Gao Bei to recruit replacement workers, promising higher profits and additional benefits. The moment they hear this, the workers immediately begin begging for another chance. Our protagonist coldly informs them that he will only give them one final opportunity. And just like that, the caravan sets off once more. As if perfectly on cue, one of Han Bao's subordinates suddenly appears with a group of bandits, blocking our protagonist's path. The workers instantly panic, with some of them already beginning to regret every life decision they have ever made. What none of them know, however, is that this entire situation is all part of our protagonist's plan. Our protagonist simply tells Gao Bei what he needs to do. With that settled, our protagonist steps forward and calmly warns the bandits that if they dare make a move, the caravan will immediately set the cargo on fire. The workers are somewhat speechless after hearing this because ordinary bandits usually do not care about goods at all. Most of them simply enjoy killing and looting in the moment. At that moment, Brother Feng proudly walks toward our protagonist and remarks that he certainly has guts. In response, our protagonist challenges him to a duel. The wager is simple. If our protagonist loses, Brother Feng can do whatever he wants with the caravan. However, if our protagonist wins, Brother Feng and his men must leave peacefully. Brother Feng bursts into mocking laughter, saying that with our protagonist's strength, it would already be a miracle if he could even kill a chicken. Even so, he agrees to the duel. Within the Chu family, everyone knows that aside from Chu Zongguang himself, the strongest direct descendant is the eldest son, Chu Kai. Naturally, the workers are terrified for our protagonist. But to everyone's shock, Our protagonist suddenly moves like lightning and strikes first. Brother Feng swiftly dodges before retaliating with a sword thrust. Our protagonist blocks the attack with his own blade. What follows is a fierce exchange of blows. Now the workers can hardly believe what they are witnessing, and one of them even wonders aloud if our protagonist has been intentionally hiding his strength all this time. In the end, our protagonist emerges victorious, though only because the entire fight was carefully scripted beforehand. Seeing this, Brother Feng admits defeat and prepares to leave with his men. However, our protagonist suddenly stops him. The workers are completely stunned by what they are seeing, ignoring their reactions. Our protagonist explains that there is no guarantee they will not encounter another group of bandits later on. Because of this, he offers to pay Brother Feng a sum of money in exchange for escorting the caravan safely. Brother Feng readily agrees. The caravan crew immediately begins discussing the matter among themselves and quickly concludes that this outcome is actually favorable. Some of them even wonder why they never thought of such an idea before. Several days later, inside the Chu Lord's private cultivation chamber, an elder has just finished reporting everything to our protagonist's father. The elder explains that our protagonist successfully completed the journey within 10 days. However, his father is more concerned about what might have happened if the plan had failed. The elder explains that the group of bandits our protagonist encountered was extremely formidable. Naturally, with such people protecting the caravan, no other bandits dared approach. Not only that, but the bandits have apparently turned the entire arrangement into a business. They are now openly charging traveling merchants protection fees in exchange for safe passage. However, our protagonist's father suddenly becomes furious when the elder suggests that he spend more time with his children. Chu Zongguang immediately reminds the old man about his research, insisting that he cannot stop now, especially after already paying such a heavy price. Hearing this, the elder clearly disagrees but ultimately leaves the chamber without saying more. Meanwhile, our protagonist has been training non-stop ever since returning from the state of Yan. Even Gao Bei notices this, remarking that his young master seems especially fired up after the journey. Inside his thoughts, our protagonist knows he must grow stronger as quickly as possible. In the game, the original Chu Shu only became a villain after a massive upheaval within the Chu family. Unfortunately, the game never properly explained what happened. This means he must prepare himself ahead of time if he wants to survive whatever disaster is coming. All the while, someone has been silently observing him from the shadows. The observer turns out to be his third brother, Chu Sheng, who frowns while thinking that our protagonist has already taken control of the caravan business and turned it highly profitable. Forget Chu Kai. At this rate, his greatest rival may actually become our protagonist instead. Just then, his mother appears and asks Chu Sheng what he is doing. Instead of answering, Chu Sheng tells her that they cannot allow the caravan business to remain in our protagonist's hands any longer. At first, his mother assumes he wants the business for himself. However, Chu Sheng points out that their father would never hand such authority to him directly. Instead, he plans to use his younger brother, Chu Sheng. Of course, his mother immediately agrees, since Chu Sheng is practically the golden child of the family. The next scene shifts to the third wife's residence. As expected, the second wife has come to visit both the third wife and her son. After exchanging formalities, the second wife asks about Chu Sheng's current business affairs. His mother explains that the weapon business does not generate much profit, but since her son is still young and has no desire to become family head, they are satisfied enough with their current situation. However, the moment the second wife mentions that she has actually come to present an opportunity to make even more money, both mother and son are stunned. Recovering quickly, the third wife wonders aloud how such a thing is possible considering the family lord has already distributed businesses among all his sons. In response, Chu Sheng's mother casually asks whether businesses cannot simply be exchanged instead, while subtly hinting that our protagonist's caravan business is currently making enormous profits. Shockingly enough, nobody expected the youngest brother to become so greedy. Just like that, both our protagonist and his younger brother are summoned to their father's chamber. Our protagonist can hardly believe his old man is suddenly lecturing them about family loyalty and brotherly bonds when their relationships are already so terrible that they could practically start killing one another right in front of him. As expected, his father wants our protagonist to hand over the caravan business to Chu Sheng so the boy can gain practical experience. How very convenient. When the business was dangerous, nobody wanted the golden child anywhere near it. But now that the routes are safe, profitable, and filled with useful connections, They suddenly call it practical training. Truly classic golden child treatment. Nonetheless, our protagonist knows there is no way he can openly oppose his father, so he accepts immediately. Our protagonist watches silently as his father even arranges for an expert named Lin Qian to personally protect Chu Shang, causing the young boy to excitedly thank their father. If our protagonist was annoyed before, now he is genuinely furious. The so-called expert is actually in the blood condensation realm. When things were dangerous, all our protagonist received was a simple "be careful" from his father. Yet now, an actual expert is being assigned to escort his younger brother. The favoritism could not possibly be more obvious. The little brat notices this as well and becomes visibly smug while thanking our protagonist. In response, our protagonist merely tells Chu Shang to be careful and take good care of himself. Out of all the possible choices, the little fool has unfortunately decided to offend the worst possible person. At this point, he is definitely not surviving peacefully for the next few chapters. The next scene takes us to the caravan courtyard. The workers have already heard the news, though there is little they can do to oppose the fourth young master. Speaking of the devil, the boy himself soon arrives with his escort and arrogantly asks whether this is the caravan crew. The manager immediately answers yes, stating that everyone has already been accounted for. The moment Chu Shang orders them to begin packing because they will depart the following day, the manager carefully tries to reason with him, pointing out that the workers only returned yesterday. Normally, our protagonist allows them to rest for at least 4 days before another trip. Unfortunately, merely mentioning our protagonist is enough to irritate Chu Shang. The manager immediately tries to backtrack, but Chu Shang coldly orders him to shut up before threatening to remove everyone from their duties. Seeing this, the entire group unanimously concludes that the fourth young master is unbearably overbearing. The following day, our protagonist even helps his younger brother load several crates personally. Just to provoke him further, the little brat smugly asks whether our protagonist has anything he wishes to say. As usual, our protagonist simply advises him to remain cautious during the journey. Chu Shang leaves while inwardly mocking our protagonist, convinced that with Lin Qian protecting him, absolutely nothing could possibly go wrong. What the foolish child does not realize, however, is that our protagonist has already made arrangements behind the scenes. The next scene takes us to the bandit stronghold. Inside, Boss Han Bao can't express his gratitude to our protagonist enough. Because of Chu Shu, they not only gain full control of the mountain over the other bandits, but they also start a legitimate business that is bringing in huge profits. Knowing where this conversation is heading, Chu Shu insists they can drink and celebrate later because he came for something urgent. When Boss Han Bao wonders aloud who the target is, our protagonist bluntly reveals that it is his younger brother, Chu Shang. Of course, Boss Han Bao is stunned. It is not every day you see someone target his own sibling. Still, Boss Han Bao wonders if this will be like the previous incident where Chu Shu killed the manager but spared everyone else. Our protagonist then explains properly that he does not want his little brother dead. The real target is Lin Qian because Chu Shang is still his flesh and blood. Now Boss Han Bao wears the expression of someone who simply cannot understand what is going on inside another man's mind. Eventually, he becomes speechless. Although our protagonist does not want his brother killed, he still instructs Boss Han Bao to cripple him, which is practically no different from death for someone born into a martial family. Seeing his expression, our protagonist explains that he cannot let his brother die because Chu Shang is the family's golden child. Of course, Boss Han Bao understands immediately. Anyone can tell the family head might go mad if that happens. Still, he explains that if it were not for his injuries, he would have already dealt with our protagonist's father and later the Shen family as well. However, our protagonist points out that the man has not fully recovered yet, so he should not do anything dangerous. He then states that he would like to personally hire Ma Kuo. This is because he does not have many people loyal to him aside from Gao Bei. In addition, Ma Kuo is sharp and highly skilled, making him the perfect choice. Boss Han Bao, however, points out a problem, asking what would happen if people discovered Ma Kuo's identity. Our protagonist reassures him that Ma Kuo has only operated in the southern region of Shangmong Mountain, meaning no one in Tongzhou Prefecture would recognize him. Speaking of Ma Kuo, when asked if he is interested, he agrees immediately, noting that he has been feeling cooped up inside the base anyway. Shifting the topic, Boss Han Bao demands to know how they will proceed with the operation. Our protagonist suggests attacking the caravan on its way back so it will look less suspicious. Because of this, Boss Han Bao insists they celebrate properly after the mission is complete. Our protagonist agrees, joking that perhaps he could even bring some baby oil. By daybreak, our protagonist leaves together with Ma Kuo and his direct subordinates. Along the way, the group runs into Brother Feng, who wonders aloud why Ma Kuo is dressed differently. Ma Kuo tells him what we already know before asking what the big guy is doing there. Brother Feng awkwardly replies that they are waiting for the Luo family caravan to collect taxes and protection fees, but the caravan arrived much earlier than expected. Our protagonist immediately stops him and asks if, by the Luo family, he means the minor Luo clan from Shuangfeng town. Brother Feng nods, noting that they received the information from our protagonist's intelligence network. Because of this, our protagonist makes a special request. Of course, Brother Feng agrees without hesitation. After receiving his instructions, Brother Feng reassures our boy that he will handle the task without causing any trouble. As for what this is all about, our protagonist explains that in the game, the Luo family acquires a collection of secret boxes, several of which contain treasures and martial techniques. In the original storyline, this eventually leads to the annihilation of their clan once word gets out. In other words, our protagonist robbing them is practically saving them from disaster. Eventually, the time comes for the Luo family caravan to pass through the mountains. Normally, this is the part where they are supposed to pay taxes and escort fees. So when the caravan manager offers 10% of the value of the goods, Brother Feng suddenly becomes furious and slaps the money away, telling them to get lost and leave the cargo behind. And just like that, the men flee immediately. Turning toward our protagonist, Brother Feng remarks that the task was surprisingly simple. However, he becomes puzzled when our protagonist specifically asks for the secret boxes while leaving the rest of the cargo untouched. Just like that, our protagonist realizes he has secured an extraordinary treasure. The next scene takes us to the Chu family mansion. Inside our protagonist's residence, he opens the boxes and discovers two valuable items. The first is a martial manual. The Bloodblade Manual is an unorthodox technique at the third level of Transformation Realm. Its entire purpose is killing. In the game, it is a martial art cultivated by the demonic sect. The second item is the Thousand-Leaf Plume, a powerful hidden weapon crafted by a mighty sect during the Cataclysm event. A single hidden weapon from it is capable of killing someone at the innate realm, in other words, someone at our protagonist father's level. Nonetheless, our protagonist decides to focus on learning the Bloodblade technique. 10 days later, Chu Shang's caravan is on its way back to the family residence. Chu Shang wears a smug smile across his face, thinking about how unbelievably easy the journey has been, not to mention the massive profits he made. Right on cue, Brother Feng and his men block the road. Following the usual custom, one of the workers approaches with money, but Brother Feng immediately becomes irritated because the commission is far too small. The worker panics as he explains that they know the rules and would never dare do anything foolish. Because of this, Brother Feng insists his men search the cargo instead. Chu Shang instantly becomes furious and is about to speak when one of the workers quickly stops him, reminding him that this is bandit territory and they should not do anything reckless. As a result, Chu Shang has no choice but to allow the search. Just like that, Brother Feng's men begin inspecting the cargo. After the search, one of his subordinates whispers something into Brother Feng's ear. He then comments aloud that the cargo is worth around 6,000 taels, meaning the earlier commission they offered was nowhere near enough. Fed up, Chu Shang finally snaps. He shouts, demanding to know what the value of the cargo has to do with him. The servant standing beside him is completely speechless. The smart move would have been to simply pay more instead of arguing. It seems the man is only now realizing that Chu Shang is somewhat greedy. Of course, Brother Feng is not someone who tolerates nonsense from a spoiled brat. Because of this, Chu Shang insists his uncle handle the situation. Lin Qian steps forward, his voice dripping with familiar arrogance, as he demands they let them pass before Brother Feng does something he will regret. Chu Shang immediately backs him up, proudly declaring that this is the power of a true master and there is nothing mere trash bandits can do about it. He even compares himself to our protagonist, mocking him as a coward who obeyed the bandits' rules even after winning the fight. Hearing this, the workers become convinced that the little brat is both greedy and foolish, especially when compared to our protagonist, who handled things with both strength and grace like a true noble young master. Sure enough, Boss Han Bao finally steps forward, completely fed up with the spoiled brat's tantrums. The moment Boss Han Bao comes face to face with Lin Qian, The man's pupils immediately contract in shock. He never expected someone at the blood condensation realm, someone close to breaking through to the innate realm, to be among the bandits' ranks. As a result, Lin Qian quickly tries to reason with boss Han Bao, but unfortunately, the man has no intention of listening. Everyone watches as boss Han Bao casually cuts down a horse with a single strike. Thankfully, Lin Qian manages to evade the attack, though he can barely hide his disbelief that a mere bandit knows military martial arts. Boss Han Bao swings his sword again while commenting that he hates the imperial court. The moment their swords clash, the difference in strength becomes obvious. Lin Qian is instantly pushed back, and boss Han Bao gives him no room to breathe. At this point, Lin Qian can only watch his life flash before his eyes. And just like that, he is killed by boss Han Bao. The outcome leaves Chu Sheng completely stunned, as he never expected things to end this way. Immediately afterward, boss Han Bao orders his men to seize the cargo. Knowing what is about to happen, Chu Sheng panics and once again tries to use his family name as a shield. The worker standing beside him can only sigh in pity, noting that the Chu family's name means nothing in these mountains. Contrary to the worker's expectations, boss Han Bao decides to show the Chu family some respect by sparing Chu Sheng's life. However, the cargo and the workers are a completely different matter. Chu Sheng watches as his own workers are slaughtered one after another, yet he does not care in the slightest so long as he survives. But to his shock, boss Han Bao suddenly grabs him and throws him to the ground. Using his foot, the bandit violently breaks every limb in Chu Sheng's body while reminding him that he only promised to spare his life. He never said he would not cripple him. 3 days later, Chu Shu is seen training with the Bloodblade technique. After he finishes, Ma Kuo, who has been observing quietly, cannot help but wonder where his master learned such an unorthodox technique, because it is definitely not something from the righteous path. In response, Chu Shu calmly points out that the purpose of martial arts is to kill, so it does not matter what kind of technique the user employs. The answer leaves Ma Kuo deeply impressed. He also inwardly notes Chu Shu's rapid progress. Just a few days ago, the man struggled to kill Lien Laosan, but now Ma Kuo is no longer confident he could defeat his master. At that moment, one of Chu Shu's subordinates enters with a report. The contents are already what everyone knows. After hearing it, Chu Shu realizes his old man must be furious, so he decides to head toward the family hall. Inside the family hall, Chu Sheng lies on a stretcher with all 4 limbs wrapped in bandages. A physician steps forward to explain the situation, causing Chu Shu's father to erupt in fury after learning that his son will remain bedridden and crippled for life. Trying to stir trouble, Chu Sheng, Chu Shu's third brother, questions his calm reaction. He even asks whether Chu Shu is secretly enjoying their younger brother's suffering, or perhaps if he orchestrated everything himself. Acting furious, Chu Shu immediately fires back, insisting that he is angrier than anyone else because he was the one who handed the business over to Chu Sheng in the first place. Even if he cried now, it would not heal Chu Sheng. Turning toward his father, Chu Shu insists that this is not the time for tears and says they need to decide what to do next. Hearing this, his father allows him to speak his thoughts. Chu Shu's suggestion boils down to 2 choices. The first is retaliation. However, that option is nearly impossible because the bandits managed to kill someone as strong as Lin Qian. If they choose to fight back recklessly, the Chu family could suffer even greater losses. The second choice is to forget the matter entirely, because the business simply cannot continue enduring losses. His father adopts a thoughtful expression while weighing the suggestion before ultimately concluding that Chu Shu is right. Unsurprisingly, nearly everyone agrees with the second option, because the first is simply too risky after all. No one truly knows the full strength of the bandits. The entire family speaks up in unison, urging the patriarch to reconsider carefully. Seeing this, Chu Shu can only scoff inwardly. To him, the rest of the family are nothing more than vultures. Every single one of them only cares about themselves, and none truly care about the Chu family. Despite this, the third wife continues demanding justice for her son. In response, Chu Shu's father coldly asks her what exactly she expects him to do. He cannot risk the entire family for one bedridden son, and he even suspects the boy brought this disaster upon himself. The chief manager also steps forward, explaining that seeking revenge would be unwise. Instead, they should simply respect the bandits and their territory. If they attempt to change routes toward the state of Yan, they would only accumulate massive losses. Because of this, Chu Shu's father asks if anyone is willing to take over the caravan business. Unfortunately, his legitimate sons are a bunch of cowards. Not to mention, the bandits easily killed someone as strong as Lin Qian. Naturally, everyone's attention shifts toward Chu Shu. The old manager even points out that Chu Shu previously managed the caravan business successfully, meaning he can simply take control once again. However, Chu Shu immediately realizes the old man is trying to use him as a sacrificial lamb. Still, the old manager is not entirely against him. When Chu Shu's father agrees with the suggestion, the old manager suddenly asks whether the family still follows the house rules. Chu Shu's father frowns and demands to know what kind of question that is, because of course they still follow the rules. As a result, Chu Shu calmly begins listing his contributions to the caravan business and how he made it profitable. Yet despite all that, his father transferred control to Chu Shang in the blink of an eye. Now that things have gone wrong, they suddenly want him to take responsibility again. Chu Shu openly declares that he will not follow his father's orders unless he is given full ownership and authority over the business. His open defiance leaves the entire family stunned, especially the second wife and her son. Even his father is furious and nearly strips him of authority on the spot. Unfortunately, the man is cornered. Aside from Chu Shu, none of his sons possess the skill or experience necessary to handle the caravan business. Seeing this, the third wife attempts to accuse Chu Shu of caring more about business than family. However, Chu Shu immediately shuts her down by pointing out that he has nothing to do with her son's current state. Fed up with the argument, Chu Shu's father finally orders Chu Shang to be permanently removed from the caravan business and all other family affairs. With that single command, Chu Shang is effectively eliminated from the succession battle. Turning toward Chu Shu, the patriarch grants him full control of the business once more and even compensates him with additional money for his troubles. Chu Shu calmly thanks his old man. Later, inside the accounting department, Chu Shu arrives to collect the money. Looking at the massive amount recorded on paper, he finally realizes something. At first, he believed he was merely competing against three idiots and their offspring, but the true enemy the entire time was his own father, because his father never truly planned to acknowledge him. As a result, Chu Shu's plan becomes painfully simple. Kill or cripple the rest of his brothers and become the only remaining heir. The next chapter begins 1 month later. Inside the second wife's residence, the woman admits that Chu Shu has become a far more formidable opponent than even Chu Kai. She sighs in regret, stating that if she had known things would turn out this way, she would have built a good relationship with Chu Shu from the very beginning. Her son agrees wholeheartedly because at the moment, Chu Shu is taking all the spotlight within the family. Unfortunately, their father dislikes anyone who constantly causes trouble. If they want to deal with Chu Shu, the second wife believes they will need to think outside the box. At that moment, Chu Sheng suggests visiting her father, his grandfather. Apparently, the man's dojo has grown significantly over the past decade. The next scene takes us to Ding Kaishan's dojo, which belongs to the second wife's father. Inside, Ding Kaishan looks disappointed like any strict father would. Apparently, the man originally wanted his daughter to marry into the Chen family, but the person she didn't ended up marrying has now made a name for himself and even surpassed Chu Shu's father in cultivation. His daughter quickly tells him that she came to ask for help, not to dwell on the past, because there is nothing they can do about it now. The moment she mentions helping his grandson secure the family head position, Ding Kaishan scoffs. He points out that her husband is still relatively young, meaning he will probably die long before her son ever inherits the position. The woman immediately becomes furious when he brings up the recent rumors about Chu Shu making a massive business deal with noble merchants from the state of Yan. Regardless, Ding Kaishan calmly notes that there is still an opportunity. If Chu Shu fails to fulfill the contract's demands, then the reputation he painstakingly built for himself will completely collapse. His daughter nods in agreement before explaining that although she controls the southern mines, she cannot directly do anything that would damage the family business, because her husband would become furious. Hearing this, Ding Kaishan proposes a simple plan. Instead of withholding the ores, they should simply sell them. The logic sounds reasonable, but his daughter quickly points out that the ores are extremely expensive, worth tens of thousands in silver. She does not know anyone capable of buying that amount in one transaction. Upon hearing this, the old man suggests selling everything to the Li family. The moment he mentions that her husband would not mind as long as there is profit involved, she immediately disagrees, because the Chu and Li families are mortal enemies. Disappointed, Ding Kaishan points out that his daughter's hesitation is exactly what keeps holding her back. Still, he asks how much ore the mines produce each month. Shockingly enough, she admits she has no idea. However, if she had to estimate, it would probably be around 50,000 caddies. With that, Ding Kaishan tells her to begin making arrangements immediately while secretly thinking to himself that his daughter truly knows nothing about business. In his eyes, this is the perfect opportunity to earn a massive profit while also helping her. The following day, the refined ores are delivered directly to his dojo. Ding Kaishan steps outside and asks how much was delivered. The worker respectfully explains that the total amount is 57,000 caddies. The man instantly becomes shocked when Ding Kaishan casually tells him to alter the numbers. Seeing the worker hesitate and refuse, Ding Kaishan coldly asks if he should remind the man who he is, making it clear this is not a request. The poor worker can only apologize obediently. Meanwhile, Ding Kaishan inwardly decides that it is time to head toward the Li family. The next scene shifts to the Li family residence. Inside the main hall, the third young master, Li Zhao, sits together with Ding Kaishan. The old man praises how well the Li family business has been performing since their father passed away, causing Li Zhao to thank him politely for the compliment. However, the sly old fox quickly changes the topic toward Chu Shu. Li Zhao immediately becomes furious, especially after remembering how Chu Shu humiliated his subordinate Li Jing and even killed one of his men back in Yuanbao town. Smiling faintly, Ding Kaishan finally reveals the true reason for his visit before explaining everything involving the Chu family. After his long explanation, the old man ends by asking whether Li Zhao is interested in purchasing the ores. Of course, Li Zhao agrees immediately. In fact, he even offers a slightly higher price than the market value. With that, the deal is settled. Ding Kaishan tells the young man to move quickly and transport the ores as soon as possible, while secretly thinking about the huge amount of money he just earned for himself behind the scenes. The moment he leaves, Li Zhao's eldest brother, Li Cheng, along with his second brother, Li Yun, enters the hall. Both men comment that Ding Kaishan is an old fox who only acts when it benefits himself, meaning Li Zhao could easily suffer losses by partnering with him. Seeing his two elder brothers, Li Zhao gives them a quick rundown of his discussion with Ding Kaishan. After hearing everything, the eldest brother, Li Cheng, immediately declares that this is a terrible idea. From his perspective, the reason neither the Shen family nor the Chu family has moved against the Li family recently is because both families are occupied with their own internal problems. Li Zhao dismissively points out that Ding Kaishan is only doing this to help his grandson secure the family head position. If they succeed, then the Chu family could eventually become their ally instead. Hearing this, Li Cheng warns him to handle the matter quietly without drawing attention. However, Li Zhao simply complains that his eldest brother is far too cautious. And usually the moment someone says nothing can go wrong, everything immediately goes wrong. The following day, Chu Shu is in the middle of training when one of the caravan workers suddenly interrupts him with an urgent report. The moment Chu Shu scolds the man for barging in recklessly, the worker quickly explains that someone within the family secretly sold off the latest batch of ores. More importantly, the ores meant for the noble merchants were sold directly to the second wife's father. The moment Chu Shu hears that Li Zhao himself is currently overseeing the transportation of the ores, a faint smirk appears on his lips. Seeing this as the perfect opportunity to kill someone, Chu Shu calmly tells Ma Kuo to gather the men because they are heading straight for Ding Kaishan's dojo. Meanwhile, Li Zhao remains completely unaware of the disaster approaching him. Suddenly, Chu Shu arrives and coldly wonders aloud whether Li Zhao truly understands what he has just done. Li Zhao calmly counters that he merely purchased ores from Ding Kaishan and asks what that has to do with Chu Shu. In response, Chu Shu asks whether the man truly intends to provoke conflict between their families over a mere batch of ores. Li Zhao instantly becomes furious. He points out that their families have already been mortal enemies for years. Not to mention, Chu Shu humiliated and beat his men in Yuanbao town, something Chu Shu almost forgot about. Even so, Chu Shu casually wonders if Li Zhao truly wants to make such a huge issue over a few unruly servants. Seeing that Li Zhao refuses to back down, Chu Shu immediately attacks. Li Zhao barely manages to block the sudden strike. However, the impact forces him backward, leaving him completely shocked by how much stronger Chu Shu has become. Without giving him any room to breathe, Chu Shu charges forward once again. After several exchanges, Chu Shu gradually gains the upper hand, and the moment Li Zhao loses his sword, he instantly realizes he is finished. Naturally, Chu Shu does not hesitate to go for the killing blow. Everything would have been over if Ding Kaishan had not stepped in. Using his golden refined hand technique, the old man blocks our protagonist's attack and coldly asks if he truly dares to kill someone in front of his dojo. Our protagonist takes a step back, noting that the old man really went to great lengths to protect his grandson. Deep down, he already knows he cannot defeat him right now because Ding Kaishan is slightly stronger than he is. Even so, our protagonist leaves behind a threat, declaring that an outsider has no right to meddle in the affairs of the Chu family. Since Ding Kaishan insists on interfering, things will not end well for him. Watching our protagonist leave, Li Zhao quickly expresses his gratitude, thankful that Ding Kaishan saved him. However, he cannot help mentioning how strange and unorthodox our protagonist's sword techniques have become. The old man agrees, believing such techniques clearly do not belong to the righteous path. On the way back, our protagonist's subordinate wonders aloud why he did not finish the fight, assuming the old man should already be frail at his age. Our protagonist shakes his head and explains that Ding Kaishan is actually stronger than him at the moment. Not to mention, there were too many people inside the dojo. Fighting there would have placed him at a severe disadvantage. Still, our protagonist promises that he will deal with the old man eventually. For now, however, he needs to return to the Chu family mansion and see what his stepmother and younger brother are plotting after daring to bite the hand that feeds them. The next scene shifts to the Chu family's main hall. Inside, our protagonist reports the entire situation and questions why his family would sell ore to the Li family, the very clan they have been trying to suppress for years. Hearing this, the main wife and her son secretly smirk to themselves, pleased that our protagonist and the second wife are beginning to clash with each other. Predictably, our protagonist's father immediately demands to know who orchestrated this betrayal. The third wife claims she knows nothing about it, stating only that the ore was sold to the second wife's father. This causes our protagonist's father to question how the ore eventually ended up in the Li family's hands. Without hesitation, the second wife explains that her father originally intended to use the ore to forge weapons himself. However, since the Li family refused to cooperate, he had no choice but to sell the ore to them instead. She does not even bother hiding the fact that he made an enormous profit by selling 50,000 caddies of ore above market price. On top of that, the second wife reminds our protagonist's father that her own father contributed greatly to the Chu family's rise. Without Ding Kaishan's support, the Chu family would never have been able to establish themselves in Tongzhou Prefecture. Naturally, this causes our protagonist's father to calm down significantly. After all, she is right, and with the amount of profit earned, the family technically did not suffer any losses. Even so, the man warns her not to think he is a fool. He makes it clear that he knows she collaborated with the Li family and firmly states that there will not be a next time. With that, the Chu patriarch declares the matter settled and dismisses the entire family. Our protagonist is obviously furious. Meanwhile, his stepmother and younger brother secretly mock him, pointing out how the patriarch simply turned a blind eye to the entire matter, almost as if our protagonist is not even part of the family. Unfortunately for them, this only gives our protagonist the green light to proceed with whatever he has been planning all along. The moment he steps outside and reunites with his subordinates, our protagonist immediately states that the meeting did not go as planned. Since that is the case, he now intends to kill Li Zhao personally. Ma Kuo is left utterly stunned. This is because our protagonist intends to prove once and for all who truly deserves the position of heir. Because of this, Ma Kuo suggests getting boss Han Bao's help. However, our protagonist shakes his head, saying Li Zhao has already given him a better idea for how to proceed with his plan. Before he can explain further, the scene cuts to a different location inside an inn. Li Jing sits alone, drinking while reflecting on how his third young master completely ruined our protagonist's plans. But in the very next second, the man nearly jumps out of his skin in terror when Ma Kuo suddenly appears behind him, calmly informing him that his young master wishes to have a personal chat with him. The poor servant has no choice but to follow Ma Kuo. Soon after, Li Jing is completely shocked to discover that Ma Kuo's young master is actually our protagonist himself. Ignoring the servant's panic, our protagonist calmly tells him to sit down. Meanwhile, Li Jing's mind races with fear as he wonders whether our protagonist plans to kill him. Instead, our protagonist decides to use the man's greed to his advantage. He knows Li Jing is not the type to settle for being an ordinary servant forever. Because of this, our protagonist places cultivation materials and valuable resources in front of him. The greed in Li Jing's eyes becomes obvious as he stares at the treasures, wondering if they are truly meant for him. Our protagonist confirms that everything can belong to him under one condition. Li Jing must reveal the routes his young master uses to transport the ore. The servant immediately becomes nervous and asks what exactly our protagonist plans to do. Our protagonist's expression turns cold as he points out that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The only question is whether Li Jing is willing to take it. Naturally, Li Jing wastes no time accepting the deal. He greedily takes all the resources before quickly leaving the place. Afterward, Ma Kuo enters, still unable to believe that his young master knew the servant would betray the Li family secrets so easily. Our protagonist simply explains that Li Jing is naturally greedy and power-hungry. A man like him could never remain satisfied as a mere servant for the rest of his life. Ma Kuo can only agree, realizing once again how unpredictable the human heart truly is. The next scene shifts to the Lai family estate. Inside, the Lai brothers discuss our protagonist. The second brother mentions hearing that their younger brother lost against him. Li Zhao reluctantly agrees, admitting that our protagonist is incredibly uncanny. Despite still being in the lowest cultivation realm, his strength is absurdly overwhelming. In fact, Li Zhao even suspects our protagonist was not fighting seriously during their previous clash. Because of this, the eldest brother suggests that Li Zhao bring their uncle along as an escort, since the man is already at the blood condensation realm. However, the youngest brother questions whether such precautions are really necessary, especially since the Shangmang Mountains now operate under strict rules. Even so, the eldest brother insists that this is precisely why Li Zhao should bring their uncle along. In dangerous times, it is always better to be safe than sorry. And just like that, the group sets out on their journey the following day. Li Zhao travels alongside his uncle, Li Zhong, who reassures him that nothing will happen. Li Zhao thanks him sincerely for accompanying him. But to their complete surprise, our protagonist suddenly appears before them, calmly stating that Li Zhao possesses something that belongs to him. Li Zhao is shocked by his sudden appearance. However, after noticing that our protagonist only brought a small group with him, his confidence immediately returns. Arrogantly, he points out that our protagonist's father already settled the matter, yet our protagonist is still causing trouble. He even questions whether our protagonist truly intends to drag the Chu family into conflict over this. In response, our protagonist releases a terrifying wave of killing intent, making it absolutely clear that he intends to kill Li Zhao today. He no longer cares about his father's opinion. As a result, Li Zhao also draws his blade and orders his men to attack. The Li family escorts charge toward our protagonist at the same time. At that exact moment, Ma Kuo rushes forward excitedly with his own men, loudly declaring that it is finally time to show their young master what they can do. Meanwhile, our protagonist heads straight toward Li Zhao. However, just before he can reach him, Li Zhong steps forward and blocks his path. The blood condensation realm expert calmly tells our protagonist that he will be his opponent instead. Our protagonist is pushed back, and Li Zhao's uncle tells him to retreat. If he does, the man will consider the encounter as if it never happened. This leaves our protagonist surprised, because he never expected the man to be this strong while only being at the blood condensation realm. Unfortunately for them, our protagonist has no intention of retreating. Instead, he instructs Ma Kuo to attack the young master while he personally handles the uncle. Of course, Ma Kuo eagerly accepts the opportunity to face the young master, leaving the older man to our protagonist. During the fight, Li Zhong warns our protagonist about the difference between someone at the blood condensation realm and someone at the bone tempering realm. After pushing our protagonist back, he suddenly launches forward and unleashes a martial arts technique. Our protagonist does his best to defend himself, but he is ultimately knocked backward. Recovering quickly, he stares at the man in shock because from that move alone he can tell the man is a monk. More specifically, a monk from the northern Great Bright Palace. Naturally, our protagonist wonders how someone from such a powerful sect ended up serving the Li family household. The man explains that back then, he was nothing more than a kitchen servant, but the Li family offered him a better opportunity in life. Because of that, he advises our protagonist to back down since he cannot win. However, those words only make our protagonist even more furious, and just like that, the two of them resume fighting. During their first exchange, the monk immediately realizes that our protagonist's fighting style is both unorthodox and dangerous. Any slight mistake could lead to fatal consequences. On the other side, Ma Kuo has already defeated the young master. The wicked bandit wastes no time reaching for the boy's arm. Unlike his master, who is struggling in battle, the monk once again sends our protagonist flying. Without giving him any chance to recover, the monk charges forward again. However, our protagonist sidesteps the attack at the last moment, causing a massive crater to appear on the ground. Immediately afterward, our protagonist counterattacks and aims directly for the monk's fingers gripping the staff. This forces the man to unintentionally let go of his weapon before preparing to fight with his bare fists instead. Unfortunately for him, our protagonist tanks the incoming punch while using that very moment to launch his own attack. In the end, the man's neck is sliced apart by the sword. Only then does our protagonist finally breathe a sigh of relief. In his mind, he never expected to fight a monk from one of the two great Buddhist sects. Thankfully, the reason he managed to win was because the monk abandoned his defensive approach and switched completely to offense. Seeing this, Makuo approaches while carrying Li Zhao. He notes how impressive it is that our protagonist managed to defeat a monk at the blood condensation realm. Curious, our protagonist asks if Makuo has ever encountered monks before, especially those from the Great Bright sect. Makuo explains that there are actually two Buddhist monk sects, one in the north and one in the south. Although he has never personally encountered one, he has been in close contact with them before since the Iron Hand cavalry base is located near the northern Buddhist sect. Meanwhile, Li Zhao has completely lost his earlier arrogance and begins begging for mercy. Unfortunately for him, it is already too late for regret. Just like that, our protagonist ends his life and sends him to the afterlife to reunite with his dead father. Afterward, our protagonist turns to Ma Kuo and suggests they take both the ore and the goods from the Li family caravan before leaving. When Ma Kuo asks what they should do about the bodies, our protagonist calmly tells him to leave them behind because he wants them to be discovered. The next scene shifts to the Li family estate. Predictably, the two Li brothers soon discover the corpses of both their youngest brother and their uncle. The second brother immediately demands to know who could have done such a thing, so the eldest brother explains everything that happened. As expected, the second brother becomes furious and is ready to personally hunt down our protagonist for revenge. However, the eldest brother stops him immediately. He angrily points out that revenge is meaningless at this moment. With the Li family already in a vulnerable position and their uncle dead, he is more concerned about their enemies taking advantage of the situation. Hearing this reasonable explanation, the second brother asks what they should do next. The eldest brother explains that they should first wait and observe how the Chu family responds. He is convinced the Chu patriarch will not remain silent after our protagonist openly defied his orders, and if necessary, they can simply hire outside experts to eliminate him later. Predictably, our protagonist's father is absolutely furious and immediately demands that he be summoned. The man cannot believe our protagonist dared to disobey him. The moment our protagonist enters the family hall, his father skips all formalities and directly asks whether he remembers the instructions he was previously given. Respectfully, our protagonist explains that he did indeed consider his father's advice. However, opportunities like the merchant deal only come once in a lifetime. Not only that, but he also managed to secure both the ore and the Li family goods at the same time. Hearing that our protagonist plans to hand over the Li family goods to the clan, the elders begin realizing that he is truly capable when it comes to handling situations. Unfortunately, his foolish elder brother suddenly interrupts and points out that our protagonist failed to consider whether his actions might bring trouble upon the entire Chu family. After all, the Chu family is not the strongest family in Tongzhou Prefecture. In response, our protagonist calmly asks whether he would have preferred that he compensate the Li family for killing their third young master. The elder brother is just about to argue back when their father immediately tells him to shut up. To our protagonist, he declares that the matter is already over. However, in the future, he should at least inform the family before making such major moves. Naturally, our protagonist happily agrees. Still, his father cannot help but feel curious about how he managed to kill Li Zhong despite the difference in realms. Our protagonist modestly explains that he merely got lucky. Since the man was older, he simply took advantage of that weakness during the battle. His father rises and prepares to dismiss the meeting, but our protagonist suddenly stops him. He points out that this might actually be the perfect opportunity for the Chu family to launch an attack and completely destroy the weakened Li family. After hearing his suggestion and detailed plan, several of the elders begin agreeing with him. However, Chu Zongguang points out that destroying an entire family is far from simple. Because of that, he insists that nobody take action without his permission. With that, the meeting finally comes to an end. Once everyone else leaves, Chu Zongguang explains his reasoning to the elders. His research has currently reached a critical stage, and because of that, he cannot allow anything unexpected to interfere. Otherwise, if he truly wanted to destroy the Li family, he would have done so long ago. Meanwhile, outside, our protagonist receives a report from one of his subordinates. The man excitedly announces that they successfully recovered 52,000 caddies of ore from the Li family caravan. The moment our protagonist hears that number, he immediately stops him and asks him to repeat himself. Once the subordinate confirms again that they obtained 52,000 caddies of ore from the Li family caravan, our protagonist reveals a wicked smile. Instantly, he realizes this must be Ding Kaishan's doing. Since his stepmother cannot possibly hide the truth forever, he now wonders how she plans to explain this matter to his father. Knowing how beneficial all of this is, our protagonist immediately insists that everything be properly documented and recorded. Naturally, the servants become worried and wonder if this might lead to future problems. However, our protagonist does not answer their concerns. Instead, he simply orders them to finish the paperwork because he plans to enter seclusion training immediately afterward. And so, after 12 days of secluded cultivation, our protagonist finally emerges and successfully breaks through into the blood condensation realm. As usual, Ma Kuo is completely shocked by his young master's progress and cannot help but praise his terrifying cultivation speed. However, our protagonist casually downplays the achievement as nothing special before immediately asking what happened while he was in seclusion. After hearing Ma Kuo's explanation, our protagonist reveals a faint smirk. He knows very well that it is not because the Li family does not want revenge. The real problem is that they simply cannot afford to cause trouble at the moment. Still, he is certain they will not stay quiet for long. Meanwhile, the next scene shifts to the Li family household. Inside, the second brother is furious. More than a week has already passed, yet they still have not avenged either their younger brother or their uncle. In response, the eldest brother calmly points out that they should actually be grateful our protagonist has not decided to attack them first. During their discussion, another young man suddenly appears. It turns out the Li family did not only have 3 brothers. Their fourth brother, Li Zhe, steps forward. Aware of the family's current situation, he expresses his desire to help. Unfortunately, the second brother's expression immediately darkens, while the eldest brother politely tells him to focus on his cultivation instead. He assures him that the Li family is not falling apart. Hearing this, Li Zi can only apologize before quietly leaving. However, the real reason behind his dismissal soon becomes obvious. Li Zi is actually an illegitimate child. Because of that, he is clearly not allowed to participate in the family's important affairs. Knowing this, the second brother smugly mocks him, pointing out that one of their brothers has already died, yet Li Zhe actually believes he can replace them. Still, the eldest brother warns him not to speak so harshly since Li Zhe is still their brother no matter what. However, the second brother coldly responds that he will never acknowledge the son of a concubine as part of the direct family line. Realizing the argument will lead nowhere, the eldest brother changes the topic and insists they focus on handling the situation regarding our protagonist killing both their uncle and third brother. Of course, the second brother's stance remains unchanged. He still wants revenge. Because of this, the eldest brother points out that the Chu family is currently dealing with internal conflict. On top of that, our protagonist lives outside the main family estate. With the strength of the Li family, eliminating him would actually not be difficult. Hearing this, the second brother wonders aloud why the idea never crossed his mind earlier. With the plan decided, the eldest brother instructs him to meet with Ding Kaishan's daughter in order to secure their path toward killing our protagonist. As for himself, he plans to personally visit the Shen family. Confused, the second brother asks why they need to involve the Shen family at all. The eldest brother explains that their family no longer possesses enough strength to protect itself. Because of that, he plans to strike a deal with the Shen family, even if it means surrendering half of the Li family's assets in exchange for protection. Naturally, the second brother is furious after hearing this. He never expected their family would fall to such a miserable state. However, the eldest brother bluntly tells him that complaining will not solve anything and orders him to stop wasting time. Unbeknownst to them, Li Zhe has secretly overheard the entire conversation. At that moment, he finally realizes something. If his brothers refuse to treat him like family, then they should not blame him for what he plans to do next. Meanwhile, our protagonist is peacefully enjoying a meal with his subordinates. Suddenly, their dinner is interrupted by Li Zi himself. The young man immediately reveals that the Lee family is plotting to assassinate our protagonist. Naturally, our protagonist demands an explanation as to why the Lee family has suddenly become so desperate for death. Lee Zhe quickly introduces himself before exposing the entire assassination plan his two brothers prepared. Both our protagonist and his subordinates are stunned. They can hardly believe the boy is willingly betraying his own brothers. In response, Lee Zhe calmly explains that his brothers never considered him part of the family in the first place. Since that is the case, it is only natural for him to seek his own path. His proposal is simple. He wants our protagonist to eliminate his two brothers. In exchange, once he becomes the new head of the Lee family, he will hand over 50% of the family's assets. Instantly, our protagonist realizes that Lee Zhe merely intends to use him as a weapon to eliminate his brothers. Naturally, our protagonist is not particularly impressed by the offer. However, Lee Zhe firmly states that everything he is doing is for his own survival. Regardless, our protagonist eventually agrees, admitting that he appreciates straightforward people like him. With that, Lee Zhe accepts the drink our protagonist offers him. As he prepares to leave, he confidently declares that one day our protagonist will look back on this moment and never regret the choice he made today. Watching him leave, our protagonist cannot help but realize that for Lee Zhe to willingly surrender half of the Lee family's assets, he must truly hate his brothers to the bone. Afterward, our protagonist orders his subordinates to begin making preparations of their own. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Shen family estate. The eldest Lee brother wastes no time with unnecessary formalities. He immediately gets to the point and offers half of the Lee family's assets in exchange for protection. When the Shen family manager points out that empty words mean nothing, the eldest brother decisively puts the agreement into writing because he has no other choice. Just like that, he successfully secures the Shen family's protection. The manager even assures him that no matter how furious the Chu patriarch becomes, he would never dare openly oppose the Shen family. Hearing this reassurance, the eldest brother confidently declares that our protagonist will definitely die tonight. Later that night, our protagonist approaches one of his subordinates, who complains that the bow they currently possess is far inferior to the one at their main hideout. Still, our protagonist calmly explains that not everyone in the province knows how to use such weapons, so they should simply make do with what they have. Almost as if on cue, our protagonist suddenly tells his men to prepare themselves because their guests have finally arrived. Outside the residence, the Lai brothers are already waiting alongside their men. Our protagonist calmly steps forward and notices they all came fully armed. Smirking slightly, he jokingly asks whether they truly came intending to kill him. His reaction instantly enrages the second brother, who points his sword toward him and accuses him of murdering both their third brother and uncle. However, our protagonist calmly corrects him. From the very beginning, his goal was never simply to seize their cargo. He intended to wipe out the entire Lee family. Even so, the eldest brother suddenly asks whether our protagonist has not noticed something suspicious. Despite all the commotion, not a single member of the Chu family has come to help him. Naturally, our protagonist already knows this situation is connected to his stepmother. Because of that, he merely smirks in response. To him, this revelation is not shocking at all. Instead, he simply wonders what a bunch of idiots like them could possibly do to him. The brothers are instantly confused by his confidence. However, the eldest brother suddenly senses something strange. In the next instant, he quickly turns around and uses his sword to deflect several incoming attacks. Unfortunately for him, one of them successfully lands. Naturally, both brothers instantly realize who launched the attack. The person behind it is none other than their own fourth brother, Lee Zhe. Now furious, the eldest brother tears off his mask and angrily demands to know why a worthless, illegitimate child like Lee Zhe would dare harm the direct lineage of the Lee family. In response, Lee Zhe scoffs coldly. He points out that he was never once treated as a true member of the Lee family. Afterward, he reveals the hidden weapon he used. Shockingly, it turns out to be the hidden weapon our protagonist previously acquired from the Luo family caravan. Even worse, the spikes are coated with a deadly poison powerful enough to kill someone at the innate realm. Unaware of this, the eldest brother angrily swears that he will fulfill their father's final wish and cripple Lee Zhe himself. However, Lee Zhe merely sneers and calmly informs him that he is already a dead man. The brothers are immediately stunned after hearing this, especially once Lee Zhe fully explains how the poison works. Meanwhile, our protagonist simply stands behind them with a smirk on his face. Even he did not expect the fourth brother of the Lee family to be even more ruthless than himself. Seeing this, the eldest Li brother immediately attempts to suppress the poison by circulating his internal energy. Unfortunately, in the very next second, he coughs out a mouthful of blood. Watching the scene unfold, our wicked protagonist slowly begins applauding while pointing out that this is exactly what true family strife looks like. The second brother instantly turns toward Li Zhe and attempts to kill him on the spot. However, his own men immediately step forward to protect the fourth brother. At the very same moment, Chu Shu gives the order to kill. The archers who had been lying in wait instantly release their arrows. Just like that, the Li family members begin falling one after another. Naturally, Ma Kuo does not sit back and watch. He immediately joins the battle as well. Meanwhile, our protagonist calmly approaches the remaining second brother. Filled with rage, the man unleashes the Li family sword techniques. However, to his absolute shock, our protagonist reveals the strength of someone who has already broken through into the blood condensation realm. The second brother is completely stunned. Even if our protagonist had just entered the realm, he should not have become this powerful so quickly. Apparently, this must be related to the innate technique our protagonist cultivates. Eventually, the second brother is completely cornered and finally realizes this might truly be the end for him. In desperation, the fool suddenly thinks about escaping. Unfortunately, the moment he attempts to flee, he is instantly killed. Seeing both brothers dead, the remaining Li family members completely lose their courage and immediately scatter in all directions. Meanwhile, our protagonist slowly approaches the last surviving brother, Li Zhe. The young man hurriedly begins talking about future cooperation while praising our protagonist for making such a wise decision. Hearing this, our protagonist merely scoffs. To him, people who betray their own family for power can never truly be trusted. Naturally, the poor boy cannot understand why our protagonist intends to kill him as well. In response, our protagonist calmly explains that Li Zhe's ambition is simply too great. He then tells him to remember one thing in his next life. Only true strength can guarantee that a person obtains what they desire. At the same time, the men supporting Li Zhe are quickly eliminated by Ma Kuo. As usual, Ma Kuo asks our protagonist what they should do with the bodies. Our protagonist casually tells him to leave them behind. However, Ma Kuo is left shocked after overhearing his master's next target. Our protagonist plans to kill Ding Kaishan as well. When Ma Kuo points out that Ding Kaishan is still technically his relative, our protagonist coldly responds that anyone who conspires to kill him is no longer family. And just like that, they arrive at Ding Kaishan's dojo. The moment the gatekeeper opens the gate while complaining about the late-night disturbance, he immediately becomes the first unfortunate victim of our protagonist. With that, they forcefully enter the dojo. Ding Kaishan quickly steps outside, absolutely furious. The old man roars in anger while attempting to assert his authority as an elder over our protagonist. However, our protagonist calmly points out that the very same elder wanted him dead. Naturally, he came here to personally send him off to the afterlife. The instant our protagonist attacks, Ding Kaishan blocks the strike using his signature technique. Believing our protagonist is still weak, the old man sneers arrogantly and claims that the only reason Chu Shu managed to defeat Li Zhong was because the man was already weakened and suffering from internal injuries. Unfortunately for him, reality proves otherwise. In the next instant, our protagonist forcefully pulls the sword straight out of Ding Kaishan's grip. Before the old man can even react, he helplessly watches as his hand is severed apart. But our protagonist is far from finished. Without giving the man any chance to resist, he immediately follows up with another attack and kills Ding Kaishan on the spot. Shockingly, the old man does not even survive for 30 seconds. After the battle, Chu Shu calmly orders his men to bring out 4 coffins. Naturally, Ma Kuo cannot help but wonder what his master plans to do next. In response, our protagonist casually tells him that he is heading home to sleep. The next morning, the scene shifts to the Chu family residence. Inside the main family hall, everyone waits in confusion, wondering why our protagonist suddenly called for a family gathering so early in the morning. As for our protagonist himself, he calmly walks into the hall carrying 4 coffins behind him. With a faint smile on his face, he announces that he has brought presents for the entire family. In the next chapter, our protagonist's father demands to know why the bodies of the Li family elites were found inside his residence. Hearing this, his son openly admits that it was his doing. Chu Zongguang immediately asks if his son no longer takes his father's words seriously. However, our protagonist explains that the Li family attacked him first. Rest assured, Chu Zongguang insists, declaring that he will personally handle the matter by demanding an explanation from the Lee family. But our protagonist calmly tells him there is no need to worry. He gestures for the servants to open the coffins. To everyone's shock, our protagonist reveals that the coffins contain the Lee family brothers. He further explains that he has already dealt with the Lee family's businesses as well. In other words, our protagonist has successfully destroyed the Lee family, leaving only two great families remaining in Tongzhou. To everyone's surprise, our protagonist takes the initiative to hand over a significant portion of the Li family's businesses to his father and the elders. Naturally, the elders are overjoyed. With these new assets secured, the Chu family can now stand on equal footing with the Shen family. Shockingly, for the first time, his old man is genuinely impressed by the way his son handled the situation. Still, he does not show it outwardly, and instead asks what is inside the fourth coffin. The moment it is opened, the second wife immediately bursts into tears upon seeing her father's corpse. She hysterically demands to know if our protagonist has lost his mind for killing her father. His old man instantly becomes furious and demands an explanation. Our protagonist calmly explains that Ding Kaishan colluded with the Li family. He questions whether such actions do not make the man a traitor, meaning he deserved death. His stepmother immediately rushes to Chu Zongguang's side, pointing out that even if her father truly did such a thing, his past contributions to the family should still count for something. Because of this, our protagonist questions why no one in the family knew until now that the Li family had come after him. He then reveals that Ding Kaishan had also been embezzling family funds. Naturally, his stepmother accuses him of lying, firmly believing her father could never do such a thing. Having already prepared for this, our protagonist suggests summoning the Chu family accountants, because records never lie. Trying to suppress his rage, Chu Zongguang immediately orders for them to be called. Moments later, the chief accounting manager confirms that everything our protagonist said is true. This leaves his stepmother completely stunned. She cannot believe her father lied to her all this time. If the man had simply wanted money, there is no way she would have refused him. Hearing this, Chu Zongguang coldly orders for the woman to be escorted back to her residence. When her foolish son tries to claim ignorance, our protagonist's father immediately silences him, asking if the boy truly thinks he is an idiot who cannot see through his schemes before ordering that he be escorted away as well. As for our protagonist, he only receives a light punishment, since the young rascal has recently been on a streak of disobedience. Later, back at our protagonist's residence, Gao Bei finally reappears after being absent for quite some time. He notes that his master has become incredibly rich thanks to the remaining assets of the Li family. Gao Bei explains that the profits are this high because the Li family had already been declining long before their downfall. In fact, he believes it is a miracle they managed to survive for so long. When our protagonist places Gao Bei in charge of the Li family businesses, the young servant secretly presents several bottles of pills discovered inside the Li family estate. Our protagonist immediately realizes he has struck gold, because these cultivation pills are so precious that money alone cannot buy them. Satisfied, he gives Gao Bei permission to leave. Inside his room, our protagonist reflects on how advancing from the blood condensation realm into the innate realm is far from simple. Since the original Chu Shu possessed only average talent, our protagonist begins to wonder how he eventually became powerful enough to rise as the Demon Lord and the greatest villain in the game. Half a month later, our protagonist trains alone in his courtyard. Suddenly, Ma Kuo enters while applauding, noting that his master has finally emerged from seclusion and that his cultivation has improved greatly. Our protagonist remarks that Ma Kuo is not bad himself, since the man has already stepped into the blood condensation realm. Because of this, Ma Kuo gratefully explains that it is all thanks to his master's guidance before reporting something unusual he discovered while our protagonist was in seclusion. Our protagonist becomes puzzled after hearing the report. According to Ma Kuo, 3 mysterious experts have been staying at the family inn, and they have been acting strangely. Our protagonist grows thoughtful as Ma Kuo explains that he cannot sense their cultivation realms at all, leading him to suspect they are above the innate realm. Ma Kuo is shocked when our protagonist casually suggests that the experts might actually be in the Qi control realm. He further explains that the Qi control realm itself contains 5 stages, ranging from the inner astral stage all the way to the heavenly connection realm. Still, our protagonist demands to know why Ma Kuo claimed the men were behaving strangely. Ma Kuo explains that the 3 men have been searching for someone named Zhang, a powerful martial artist from another state. The cultivation technique Ma Kuo describes sounds eerily familiar because it is connected to the vast ocean mind skill of the Chu family. Our protagonist is immediately shocked, because in the game's storyline, this is precisely the moment when the original Chu Shu first encountered a major stroke of luck. In other words, these three cultivators are directly tied to the future transformation of his family. Because of this, our protagonist naturally decides to meet the martial artists himself. Later, within the city, after waiting for some time, Ma Kuo suddenly spots the three men. With only a single glance, our protagonist can already tell that the trio are far from ordinary. So when Ma Kuo asks whether his master wishes to meet them, our protagonist shakes his head, noting that now is not the right time. Instead, he orders Ma Kuo and the others to keep a close eye on the men while maintaining a safe distance. At that exact moment, the man standing in the middle suddenly turns toward our protagonist's direction. Our protagonist is instantly startled, clearly not expecting the man to have noticed him so quickly. One of the men suddenly asks his brother why he is looking up, to which the man explains that he felt someone's gaze directed toward them. Inside the inn, our protagonist notes the huge gap in strength between himself and them, deciding to play it safe, otherwise he might end up dead. The next scene shifts to the Shen family household. Inside, Shen Rong is absolutely furious. He cannot believe the Li family lost to our protagonist, especially after promising half of their assets to the Shen family. His distracted state almost causes him to burn his tongue while drinking tea. Instantly enraged, he scolds the servant who served him the tea, making the poor man repeatedly apologize as he offers to prepare another cup. However, Shen Rong dismisses him, noting that no amount of good tea can fix his bad luck. The servant then adds that our protagonist's men kill without mercy and are extremely ruthless because they are bandits. Shen Rong is both surprised and shocked to hear this. It turns out the servant used to be a bandit himself. His former leader was the very man Ma Kuo killed during the time our protagonist was supposed to be assassinated. After hearing the man's long narration, Shen Rong immediately pieces everything together. He realizes this is the only reason our protagonist managed to negotiate with the bandits in the first place, not to mention the incident involving his youngest brother. Trying to use this as leverage, Shen Rong decides to personally head to the Chu mansion to meet our protagonist. Later, at our protagonist's residence while he is training, one of his subordinates reports that he has a guest from the Shen family waiting for him. Feeling puzzled, our protagonist demands to know Shen Rong's identity, to which the subordinate explains that the man is the head steward of the Shen family. In addition, the Shen brothers, who are now respectable and powerful figures, were raised by him. Our protagonist can tell the man is no simple individual, so he naturally wonders why he came. Unfortunately, even the subordinate admits he has no clue. The next scene takes us to a private room. Our protagonist gets straight to the point, asking why someone like Shen Rong came to see him. Shen Rong does not respond immediately. Instead, he hands over a signed agreement. After reading its contents, our protagonist realizes it is an agreement between himself and the eldest Li brother. Shen Rong does not deny it, and directly demands 2/3 of the Li family business instead of half as compensation. Naturally, our protagonist asks on what grounds he has the right to make such a demand. As if waiting for that question, Shen Rong smugly reveals our protagonist's secret collusion with the bandits and the events that followed afterward. Because of this, our protagonist warns him to speak carefully and stop making accusations without evidence. That is when Shen Rong points toward his servant, and the man happily recounts the entire incident involving his former bandit leader. Of course, this immediately makes our protagonist realize the servant was once one of Lian Lozan's men. At that moment, he truly feels unlucky for allowing one of them to slip away. Regardless, our protagonist remains completely unfazed. Shen Rong also notices his calm demeanor and inwardly thinks the boy is quite interesting. Still, he tells our protagonist to grant his demands because everyone already knows what will happen if word gets out. In response, our protagonist explains that fulfilling such demands would be difficult, considering he already offered half of the Li family business to the Shen family. Shen Rong could not care less. Since he has leverage over our protagonist, he believes the boy has no room for negotiation. However, in the very next instant, Shen Rong is shocked as our protagonist suddenly strikes him. He angrily demands to know if our protagonist truly dares to kill him. Our protagonist simply pushes him aside before turning toward the foolish servant. The former bandit is killed on the spot as well. Hearing the commotion, our protagonist's subordinate rushes inside and is immediately left stunned by what he sees. Gao Bei inwardly thinks that Shenrong is no small fry within the Shen family. What his master has just done is practically inviting calamity upon the Chu family. After our protagonist explains the situation to Gao Bei, the man becomes even more shocked, though he still points out that his master has killed someone from the Shen family. Contrary to Gao Bei's panic, our protagonist remains very calm. He points out that Shenrong personally brought him the perfect excuse to kill him. Gao Bei falls speechless, thinking that while his master truly knows how to handle situations, he is even more talented at causing trouble. The next scene takes us to the Chu family's main hall. Our protagonist's old man, already used to his troublesome behavior, wonders who or what his son offended this time. The moment our protagonist calmly mentions that he killed the Shen family steward, Chu Zongguang unintentionally crushes his teacup in shock. Naturally, the entire family and the elders wear similar expressions. Furious, Chu Zongguang demands to know what gave his ruthless son the courage to do such a thing. Defending his actions, our protagonist presents the signed agreement from Shenrong while explaining the conversation they had and how Shenrong colluded with the Li family. After reading the agreement, his father immediately falls silent. Seeing this, some elders agree that Shenrong brought this upon himself because it makes no sense for him to demand compensation after our protagonist already wiped out the Li family. Even so, Chu Zongguang points out that regardless of whether our protagonist had a valid reason to kill Shenrong, his actions have dragged the entire Chu family into trouble. Our protagonist already expected the old man to be fearful, but he did not expect him to be this cowardly. Regardless, he tells his old man not to panic because the Chu family is not some insignificant force. The Shen family is only feared because they have the backing of the Kanglin sword sect. Hearing this, his old man explains that the Kanglin sword sect is the #1 sect in Wei County and ranks first among the 7 sects and 8 factions. Our protagonist admits that he already knows all of this. However, he is not someone who acts without a plan. Before our protagonist can finish speaking, Chu Kai cuts him off, pointing out that his reckless behavior is going to destroy the family. Our protagonist simply ignores him. Instead, his old man wants to know what he means by suggesting they align themselves with the Northern Yan court when Wei County is already aligned with them. Chu Shu explains that the county has only acknowledged the Northern Yan court in name, but has never truly abided by its decrees. If the Chu family takes the initiative and sets an example, even the Kanglin sword sect would not dare act against them. In other words, they can repel the Shen family. Even if they fail, the Shen family will definitely think twice before making a move. Although the plan sounds reasonable, our protagonist knows it has one major flaw. If his family submits to the Northern Yan court, they will eventually be ostracized by the other martial factions. However, that is a problem for the future. Unfortunately, that is not the only flaw. His father rejects the plan outright. Instead, he orders him to head to the ancestral hall to reflect while he contacts the Shen family to find out what they want. Our protagonist is inwardly stunned. He never accounted for his old man being this spineless and wonders if he is not afraid of becoming a laughingstock. This time, his father even arranges for guards to watch over him to make sure he truly reflects. However, Chu Shu calmly tells them he can walk on his own, all the while thinking about how badly he has miscalculated. If he had known his father was this cowardly, he would have definitely come up with another plan. Meanwhile, Chu Kai is secretly delighted. He had already given up on becoming the family heir, but with this development, he believes the position is finally his. On the other hand, Chu Zongguang instructs his most trusted elder to quietly visit the Shen family, explain the situation, and make it absolutely clear that the Chu family has no intention of clashing with them. The next scene shifts to the Shen mansion. The second young master is furious that his secluded cultivation has been interrupted, slowing his plans to enter the Kanglin sword sect and reunite with his senior brother. However, when the servant reports that our protagonist has killed Shenrong, he immediately flies into a rage, wondering if the Chu family has gone completely mad. The servant quickly explains that the Chu elder is waiting outside and has already made it clear that the Chu family considers the incident an accident and has no intention of starting a conflict. The Shen young master decides to meet the elder. However, before the old man can even speak, he coldly orders him to cripple our protagonist. For a martial artist, crippling one's cultivation is no different from a death sentence, so the elder is naturally horrified. In response, the Shen young master furiously points out that they are not in any position to make demands, and that he is already being generous. The elder decides to report everything back to our protagonist's father, especially after the young master mentions that his elder brother will be arriving soon. If that happens, the situation could spiral completely out of control. Back at the Chu family, our protagonist's father is furious, believing the Shen family has gone too far. This causes the elder to remind him of Chu Shu's earlier proposal. However, Chu Zongguang sticks to his guns. It is not that he dislikes the plan, but his research has reached a critical stage, leaving him with no choice but to accept the Shen family's demands. The old elder begs him to reconsider. After all, our protagonist is his own flesh and blood and has shown tremendous promise in cultivation. Even so, Chu Zongguang refuses. Instead, he orders the elder to make preparations to welcome Shen Mo, the Shen family's second young master. Meanwhile, at the Chu family's ancestral hall, Gao Bei rushes in with urgent news. The report is exactly what our protagonist had predicted. Gao Bei insists they should flee, but Chu Shu has already made his decision. He walks over to a table, picks up a brush, and begins writing. Once he finishes, he hands the letter to Gao Bei. He instructs him to contact the 3 mysterious men who recently appeared in the city. After delivering the message, Gao Bei and brother Ma Kuo are to retreat immediately and never return. With everything arranged, our protagonist calmly prepares for what may very well be his final meal, because this marks the turning point of the story. In other words, the Chu family is about to be destroyed. Unbeknownst to the rest of the family, including his father, who has just welcomed Shen Mo, the second young master of the Shen family, everything is already in motion. Chu Zongguang even prepares a small banquet to apologize personally, and assures Shen Mo that he will cripple our protagonist right before his eyes. Satisfied, Shen Mo nods in approval and orders that Chu Shu be brought in. When Chu Shu enters the family hall, his father is momentarily taken aback. His son definitely knows he is about to lose his cultivation, yet he does not show the slightest trace of fear. So when his father orders him to confess his sins before Shen Mo, our protagonist simply remarks that it should be about time. Before his old man can process what he means, a thunderous crash echoes from outside. One of the guards rushes out to investigate before quickly returning with a terrified expression. The front gate has been breached. Apparently, this is the arrangement our protagonist made earlier, leaving his father wondering who could possibly have arrived. Predictably, the intruders are the same 3 mysterious men who recently appeared in the prefecture. The leader immediately points at Chu Zongguang and calls him a treacherous bastard, declaring that they have finally tracked him down. For more than 20 years, they have searched throughout the Qi nation for him, never imagining that Chu Zongguang had hidden himself within the Dragon Cavalry Imperial Guard under a fake identity. Naturally, this revelation shocks almost everyone present. Even Shen Mo is left speechless. Our protagonist is equally stunned. He explains that the Dragon Cavalry Imperial Guard is the elite royal army of Eastern Qi. To join, one must possess at least innate realm cultivation. With such a prestigious status, it is no wonder Chu Zongguang had been able to establish himself so easily in Wei County. Seeing everyone's bewildered expressions, the mysterious men realize that no one knows about Chu Zongguang's past, so they begin recounting everything. They explain that the Dragon Cavalry Imperial Guard operates in squads of 5, and 20 years ago, Chu Zongguang was assigned to their team. Back then, they received orders from the prince to infiltrate the Miaojiang region and secure an important treasure for the second prince. To ensure the mission's success, the treasure was divided among multiple squads carrying decoys in order to scatter their pursuers. Unfortunately, Chu Zongguang's squad happened to possess the real treasure. While the others desperately fought to hold off their enemies, our protagonist's father abandoned them and escaped with the treasure. As punishment, their squad leader was beaten to death, while the remaining members suffered such severe punishment that their cultivation could never progress again, leaving them permanently stuck at the inner astral realm. Hearing the full story, it finally dawns on our protagonist. This is the true reason why, in the game's original plot, the Chu family was wiped out during a massive upheaval. His father's hidden identity ultimately leads to the destruction of the entire family. Our protagonist's old man walks forward and explains that, back then, a divine opportunity had fallen into his hands. He believes no one in their right mind could have resisted such a temptation. Hearing this, his former comrade asks if he knows who helped them discover his location. Of course, Chu Zongguang wants to know who betrayed him. That's when our protagonist steps forward and reveals that it was him. Naturally, his old man is furious. He shouts about family loyalty, but our protagonist fires back, pointing out how one-sided that loyalty is. After all, his old man didn't hesitate to sacrifice him just to save himself. Seeing this, Chu Zongguang's former comrade mocks him, saying this is nothing but karma. In response, our protagonist's father desperately begs for his life, even offering to share the treasure with them. The man responds by drawing a sword they had prepared for this special occasion. It turns out the sword is the token of forgiveness from the second prince. The man declares that he will use it to kill Chu Zongguang, restoring both the prince's honor and avenging their fallen eldest brother. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, Shenmo hurriedly explains that he isn't a member of the Chu family. But the man merely sneers, saying anyone associated with Chu Zongguang is as good as dead. Hearing this, our protagonist immediately steps forward, publicly renouncing his father. He adds that if they spare his life, he will help them search for the treasure. That move instantly secures his freedom. As for the rest of the Chu family, the man orders every one of them to be executed. It is especially unfortunate for the first wife and her son, who can't help wondering how everything ended up like this, especially when he was so close to becoming the next family head. Those are his final thoughts before one of the men wielding a spear moves instantly and kills him on the spot. While one side is busy slaughtering the entire Chu family, Chu Zongguang is locked in battle with their leader. Of course, there is a huge gap in strength. That's because our protagonist's father is still at the innate realm, while the man he is facing has already reached the astral realm. Meanwhile, our protagonist hides in a safe spot, already knowing how the battle will end. He believes both his father and Shenmo are destined to lose. Predictably, our protagonist's father's sword shatters in the middle of the fight. He secretly tosses a pill into his mouth before throwing its powdered contents into his attacker's face. His former comrade's face immediately begins to burn as he realizes it is venom from the Five Venom sect. Seizing the opportunity, Chu Zongguang swallows the antidote and delivers a powerful palm strike. That is how he manages to kill the man. Just then, the man's brother arrives after wiping out the remaining members of the Chu family. Without hesitation, he launches another attack at Chu Zongguang, who narrowly dodges the incoming spear strike. Turning to Shenmo, Chu Zongguang tells him to use whatever trump card he has before it's too late. Hearing this, Shenmo decides not to hold back. He unleashes 3 slashes infused with sword aura. The attack kills one of the 3 brothers, leaving only one survivor. The last brother stares in disbelief, unable to understand how someone still in the innate realm can wield astral chi. As for the reason, Shenmo can only thank his elder brother for bringing the astral chi short sword technique from the Kanglan sword sect back to their household. Seeing this, the last surviving brother decides to retreat. Chu Zongguang knows that if he lets the man escape, his own fate is sealed. To prevent the second prince of the Qi nation from discovering his location, he decides to kill him. In response, the man thrusts his spear forward. Chu Zongguang grabs it with both hands, holding the man firmly in place. He then turns to Shenmo and orders him to strike. Once again, Shenmo uses the same technique he obtained from his elder brother. His astral chi pierces both the man and Chu Zongguang. Looking down at the massive hole in his chest, our protagonist's old man wonders why. His lifeless body soon collapses to the ground, as Shenmo simply chuckles. If the second prince of Eastern Qi wants this treasure, then it is only natural for him to want it as well. He even believes that with the help of this treasure, he can finally step out of his elder brother's shadow. But at that very moment, our protagonist re-enters the scene. With a weapon already in hand, he showers Shenmo with a rain of needles. Wearing a smug smirk, he calmly bids Shenmo farewell. Shenmo cuts down the incoming needles while wondering how our protagonist managed to get his hands on the thousand-leaf plume. Eventually, his sword breaks in the middle of the fight, leaving him with no choice but to switch tactics. Seeing Shenmo charge straight at him, our protagonist doesn't move an inch. Shenmo is confused. Why isn't our protagonist trying to dodge his attack? Instead, Chushu deliberately allows himself to be struck. At the same moment, he unleashes the Sleeve Azure Dragon, instantly killing Shenmo. Just like Shenmo, our protagonist is also after the treasure. With the battle over, it is time to collect the spoils. He first searches the bodies of the 3 Dragon Cavalry Imperial Guards. Afterward, he rushes into the mansion to find the main treasure. Our protagonist rummages through his father's study in search of it. He finds 2 useful items, but the ultimate treasure is nowhere to be seen. At that moment, he realizes it must be on his father's body, since it is far too important to leave elsewhere. Without wasting another second, he rushes back to his father's corpse, and as expected, finds that the man had been carrying it the entire time. Now it is time to clean up the scene. At first he considers burning down the entire mansion, but that would only attract unwanted attention. Instead, he settles on a second plan. He stages the battlefield to make it look as though a fierce fight took place and that he was killed during the battle. Satisfied with the result, our protagonist leaves, noting that this should be enough to fool Shenbai, Shenmo's elder brother, since the man is a genuine threat. Just like that, our protagonist leaves the Chu mansion with all of its resources and wealth. The next scene takes us to the northern Mount Shangmang. There, our protagonist plans to go into secluded cultivation. He enters a cave and decides it is finally time to open the treasure. Fortunately, he knows how to unlock it because the lock was crafted by his own family. When he opens the box, Chu Shu finds a golden silkworm inside, making him wonder if this is the ultimate treasure mentioned in the game's storyline. However, after taking a closer look, he realizes it is actually the mystical goo worm. Chu Shu explains that the worm was created by the moon worship sect of Miaojiang and was born from a fragment of the Buddha's bone. Its effect is similar to an innate art, allowing it to completely reforge a person's foundation. Now our protagonist finally understands why his father remained stuck in the innate realm for so many years. The man had been sacrificing his own energy to refine the worm. Unfortunately for him, he never got the chance to use it. Now it belongs to our protagonist. Without hesitation, our protagonist cuts open his chest and places the goo worm inside. The worm immediately burrows into his body. Its effects are just as immediate as all of his injuries heal in an instant. According to our protagonist, that incredible regeneration is only the worm's most basic ability. Its true power is reforging one's foundation. In other words, it can transform even the most trash and untalented warrior into a once-in-a-century genius. As proof, he can feel his cultivation being completely reshaped, bringing him one step closer to the innate realm. With that complete, he turns his attention to the manuals he obtained from the Chu mansion, hoping they won't disappoint him. As expected, both are martial arts manuals. One contains a blade technique capable of reaching the 4th to 5th transformation, while the other is a fist and hand technique of an even higher grade. Finally, our protagonist examines the last item he took from the mansion. At first, he assumes it is nothing more than a secret box. However, the moment he places his sword beside it, the sword suddenly disappears. Confused, our protagonist inspects the box more carefully. To his surprise, it turns out to be a spatial storage box. He never expected to find something so incredibly rare. Satisfied with his discovery, he stores all of his belongings inside before entering seclusion to push his cultivation into the innate realm while waiting for the commotion surrounding him to die down. The scene skips ahead to 7 days later. Shenbai, Shenmo's elder brother, has just returned. After learning of his younger brother's death, he demands to know why the steward is still alive. The servants immediately fall to their knees, begging for mercy as they explain that the incident had nothing to do with them. Shenmo insisted on going to the Chu family alone, and no one could stop him. When Shenbai orders them to take him to the body, they quickly comply. Later, Shenbai invites Chief Constable Chen to inspect the scene. The Chief Constable greets him respectfully. He tells him there is no need for such formalities since he is simply here to do his job. Without wasting time, Chief Constable Chen begins performing an autopsy. 15 minutes later, he informs Shenbai that his younger brother's death is far from simple. The entire crime scene has been staged, leaving Shenbai shocked. When asked who is responsible, Chief Constable Chen gives a single answer. It was our protagonist. Hearing this, Shenbai tells the Chief Constable to elaborate. The man agrees and turns to the 3 corpses. Judging from their scars and physical condition, he can tell they are soldiers and are most likely the ones who attacked the Chu mansion. He explains how the 3 men died. Chu Zongguang was responsible for killing the strongest warrior by using a venom sect pill, but both he and the 3rd soldier have massive holes in their chests. Based on that reasoning, Shenbai believes none of the 3 men killed his brother. However, the Chief Constable points out that he is close, but the scene was staged. He says this because he examined Shenmo's fingers and confirmed that he used the meridian-severing sword finger from the Kanglin sword sect. Yet none of the corpses bear injuries consistent with that technique. That is why he strongly believes someone deliberately made the battlefield look like a case of mutual destruction. Since their prime suspect is Chu Shu, Shenbai wonders how that is even possible. After all, Chu Shu is weak and nothing but trash. However, the Chief Constable points out 3 important facts. Among all the corpses, only Chu Shu's face was completely destroyed. In addition, Chu Shu is currently at the blood condensation realm and fights with a sword, while this corpse is not at that realm and clearly uses a spear. In other words, Shen Bai concludes that Chu Shu is still alive and is most likely the one who killed his brother. The chief constable nods in agreement. Because of this, Shen Bai thanks the man and decides to contact the Kanglin Sword sect to issue a full-scale bounty across Wei County. After rewarding the chief constable generously and sending him away, the disciples of the Kanglin Sword sect begin a large-scale search throughout Wei County. However, since Chu Shu is already on the run, capturing him won't be easy. 3 months pass since the search begins, and the scene shifts to Shanyang Prefecture in northern Yan. Naturally, it would be foolish for our protagonist to return to Wei County with such a massive bounty on his head. Nevertheless, he finally breaks through to the innate realm and gains partial mastery over his martial techniques. He also has another reason for fleeing to northern Yan. An ancient ruin is about to emerge there. Chu Shu books a room at an inn. Although he hasn't been in contact with brother Ma Kuo and Gao Bei, he believes they should be safe. For now, however, it is time for him to explore the game's storyline as a wandering swordsman. The moment Chu Shu steps out of the inn, he notices a commotion. A young man is desperately trying to impress a beautiful girl. The girl, Lin Ye, tells young Master Zhang to have some self-respect and leave her alone. Our protagonist approaches, wondering if this is some kind of local tradition. Hearing that, the man standing beside him can tell he is new to town and explains that it isn't. It turns out the girl is the greatest beauty in the entire prefecture. Curious, our protagonist asks if that means she comes from a noble family. The man shakes his head, explaining that her family background is completely ordinary. However, the man trying to win her favor is Zhang Baichen of the Zhang family. The man then volunteers even more information than he was asked for. Unlike Zhang Baichen, the second young master, his elder brother is a genius who was accepted into the Bashan Sword sect, one of the top 7 sects. In other words, the younger brother carries the title of the family's trash. Now it makes sense why a commoner would dare act so rudely toward him. Out of nowhere, Lin Ye points at our protagonist and boldly claims that he is her man. It quickly becomes obvious that she chose him simply because he is a handsome swordsman. Our protagonist sees through her scheme immediately, while the man beside him laughs and teases him for acting so clueless. When she approaches, Chu Shu calmly asks if the two of them know each other. She doesn't respond. Instead, she whispers, insisting that our protagonist play along and promising that she will definitely repay the favor. Just like that, she tells Zhang Baichen that she already has a man. However, what truly angers our protagonist is the fact that she drags her family into the lie, claiming that the Lin family cares deeply about its reputation. As a result, Chu Shu slaps her across the face. Everyone is stunned, except for the love-struck young master, who immediately becomes furious. Meanwhile, Lin Ye lies on the ground, clutching her burning red cheek. Our protagonist tells her that he would never hit a woman, but her case is different. She is nothing but a snake. Annoyed by Zhang Baichen's constant pestering, she decided to use him as a shield. Since the Zhang family is considered the local tyrant, she practically set our protagonist up to be killed. This time, even the crowd sides with our protagonist. Although Zhang Baichen is known as the family's trash, no one expected him to be this slow. The moment he defends Lin Ye and accuses our protagonist of hitting her without reason, the crowd is left speechless, wondering whether half his brain is missing. He even orders his bodyguard to teach our protagonist a lesson. The bodyguard steps forward and stops in front of Chu Shu. He offers him one final chance, saying that if he apologizes to his young master, the matter can end peacefully. When Chu Shu doesn't respond, the man launches his attack. In response, Chu Shu uses the hand and fist grappling technique he learned back in the cave. Everyone is shocked, including the bodyguard himself, as they watch Chu Shu twist his arm into an unnatural angle. The crowd's mouths fall open as they realize our protagonist has already reached the innate realm. Seeing this, Zhang Baichen immediately flees, dragging Lin Ye along with him. A kind passerby urges our protagonist to run as well, warning him that he is only one man and cannot stand against the full might of the Zhang family. However, our protagonist simply thanks him for the advice. He then walks over to Zhang Baichen's bodyguard, who immediately drops to his knees and begs for mercy. Chu Shu calmly tells him that he has no intention of taking his life. The poor man is left stunned when our protagonist casually asks him to take him to the Zhang family. Before the bodyguard can even react, Chu Shu calmly adds that he has a little business to discuss with Zhang Baishan's father. Naturally, after hearing this, Zhang Baishan's guard wonders if our protagonist has gone mad. But seeing how serious he looks, he decides to take him to meet the head of the Zhang family. Meanwhile, at the Zhang family estate, Zhang Baikan's father is reprimanding him for running in as though he is being chased. When his father, Zhang Songling, learns that someone was after him, he naturally wonders who would dare lay a hand on his son when he had sent Han Wei to protect him. Han Wei turns out to be Zhang Baikan's guard. Zhang Baishan reports that Han Wei was crippled in a single move by our protagonist. Now his father is even more surprised that the person his son is talking about is an outsider at the innate realm. At that moment, Chu Shu casually enters the mansion as though he owns the place, commenting on how the Zhang family seems to have complete control over Shanyang Prefecture. Naturally, Zhang Songling is furious that someone would dare enter his home so boldly, especially after what he did. Chu Shu simply clears up the misunderstanding, noting that Han Wei is only injured. He explains that he came to discuss a business opportunity that could bring massive profits. Hearing this, Zhang Songling asks to hear the details, leaving his son shocked by his father's sudden change in attitude. Ignoring Zhang Baishan, Chu Shu explains that he wants to obtain something from the Dao family auction. Since he is an outsider, he cannot participate directly, which is why he needs the Zhang family's help. He even offers a sizable deposit to prove how serious he is. The amount is far from small, making Zhang Songling wonder about his true identity. Since they are now partners, Zhang Songling asks for our protagonist's name. Chu Shu responds by giving the name from his previous life. As he leaves, the Zhang patriarch remarks that our protagonist is definitely not from around here. The moment his son asks if they are really going to let him leave, his father immediately tells him to shut up before asking what exactly happened. Han Wei then reports everything that occurred. When Zhang Songling hears that it all started because of Lin Ye, he becomes furious, noting that he has repeatedly warned his foolish son that the girl is nothing but trouble. Even so, he cannot simply let the matter rest. So he orders Han Wei to gather every piece of relevant information about our protagonist. And just like that, 5 days pass in a flash. Soon it is the day of the Dao family auction. After introducing himself as a manager of the Dao family, the auctioneer presents the first item. It is a mysterious box dating back to before the catastrophic event, excavated from a mid-tier sect in the southern Barbarian mountains. The opening bid starts at 1,000 taels of silver, prompting the crowd to begin raising their bidding panels. Turning to our protagonist, Zhang Songling asks if he is not interested. Our protagonist thinks to himself that in the original game storyline he is familiar with quite a few of these items. However, he has no way of knowing whether any of them are hidden treasures. In other words, there is no reason to take unnecessary risks. After some time, the auctioneer presents another mysterious box. This one originates from the demonic path and was recovered from a demonic sect. He gives everyone a word of caution before starting the bidding. However, no one seems interested the moment they hear it came from the demonic path, exactly as Zhang Songling expected. When our protagonist tells him that he wants it, Zhang Songling immediately raises his bidding panel. Another man raises the bid by 200,000 taels. Just like that, a fierce bidding war breaks out between the two men. Eventually, the man turns to Zhang Songling and asks why he is going so far to compete with him, pointing out that he has never offended him. Hearing this, Zhang Songling hurriedly explains to the gang leader that he is bidding on behalf of his son. Because of that, the gang leader agrees to back off if Zhang Songling pays him 100 taels of silver. Turning toward our protagonist, Zhang Songling sees the blank expression on his face. He immediately agrees to the gang leader Cao's offer. Meanwhile, our protagonist never expected to spend so much that the Chu family's wealth is nearly exhausted. Regardless, he tells Zhang Songling to handle the necessary arrangements and decides to leave, knowing he has already obtained the most important item from the auction. Meanwhile, the next scene takes us back to the Zhang family estate. Han Wei reports his findings to Zhang Songling, explaining that the name our protagonist gave them was fake. He also informs him about the bounty on Chu Shu, though he is uncertain because the bounty describes Chu Shu as being at the blood condensation realm, while our protagonist is at the innate realm, despite their striking resemblance. Regardless, Zhang Songling's eyes flash with greed as he remarks that the information is more than enough. Han Wei asks whether they should sell the information to Wei County and the Kanglin sword sect. However, the patriarch shakes his head. He explains that the most important part of the information is that our protagonist has no powerful backing. Since the Chu family has been annihilated, our protagonist is currently carrying the entire Chu family's fortune with him, and Zhang Songling plans to seize it before selling the information. However, Han Wei points out that our protagonist is already at the innate realm. The patriarch simply tells him to rally the major families of the prefecture and ask for their assistance. Just like that, Han Wei leaves to make the necessary arrangements. Later that night, our protagonist returns to collect the item from the auction and make the payment. That is when Zhang Songling takes the secret box and asks our protagonist to explain the bounty on his head. And just like that, greed becomes his downfall. He tries to corner Chu Xiu, telling him the only way out is to hand over everything he took from the Chu family. When Chu Xiu asks if he truly thinks he has won, the man warns that wealth is merely a worldly possession, while one's life is far more precious. Our protagonist calmly reaches for his sword and asks if the man isn't afraid of choking on his own greed. Zhang Songling draws his sword, pointing out that although Chu Xiu is in the innate realm, he has no backing, not to mention there is a bounty on his head. Hearing this, Chu Xiu simply lets out a wicked chuckle before pointing out that the man has failed to follow his own advice. And just like that, he attacks. The patriarch manages to block the strike in time. However, our protagonist effortlessly shatters his protective barrier. Realizing the situation, the man immediately gives the order to attack. All of the Zhang family's men charge at our protagonist at once. In response, our protagonist cuts them all down with a single strike. Seeing this unfold, the Zhang patriarch realizes he has to do something. Otherwise, the family will suffer devastating losses. Using the Zhang family's chaotic wind sword art, he attempts to kill our protagonist from behind, but to his surprise, our protagonist counters instantly. Despite both of them being in the same innate realm, our protagonist completely overpowers him and forces him back. At that moment, Han Wei moves in from behind to grab our protagonist. Using his grappling technique, our protagonist seizes Han Wei's arm and kills him for real this time, all while remarking that the fool had thrown away his only chance. The moment Han Wei's body hits the ground, Zhang Baiqin tries to flee. His father attempts to warn him. But it's already too late. Our protagonist catches him. Now the man is sweating bullets, realizing he has offended the worst possible person. Desperate, he begs for his son's life and even offers to compensate our protagonist. However, Chu Xiu simply shakes his head, pointing out how naive the man is. The moment he decided to kill Chu Xiu, he had already crossed the point of no return. The instant Zhang Baiqin's lifeless body drops to the floor, his father is consumed by rage and swears to kill our protagonist. In response, Chu Xiu simply grabs his hand using the very same martial arts technique. Then he sends the man off to reunite with his son. The moment the patriarch falls, the remaining members of the Zhang family immediately scatter in every direction. Meanwhile, Chu Xiu takes the secret box he came for, muttering that all of this had been completely unnecessary. Just then, reinforcements from another family arrive, hoping they aren't too late. Seeing the bloodshed, the leader asks our protagonist if he has gone mad. However, Chu Xiu doesn't react. Instead, he calmly asks for the man's identity. Caught off guard, the man introduces himself as Dao Zongwang of the Dao family. Hearing this, Chu Xiu explains that he has only settled a score with the Zhang family and has no intention of making the entire Shangyang prefecture his enemy. Dao Zongwang mistakes this for our protagonist trying to be reasonable to avoid the consequences. Chu Xiu simply smiles wickedly. With that, he unleashes a sword strike. In response, Dao Zongwang quickly raises his sword in a defensive stance to block the attack. The instant the strike lands, he is forced backward. His sword even shatters. Now it becomes painfully obvious that if this had been a real fight, he wouldn't have survived even 10 seconds. And just like that, he gives way and tells Chu Xiu he is free to leave. Thankfully, this background character knows exactly whose boots to lick. And just like that, our protagonist walks away with the secret box in his hand. Inside the secret box is a martial arts manual containing the fourth transformation of the Blood River sect. It contains a sword technique that weaponizes killing intent and sharpens qi. With the manual secured, Chu Xiu thinks it is time to head to Mount Luyang before the ancient ruins appear. In the next scene, the eldest son of the Zhang family, Zhang Beitao, returns only to find the servants holding a burial ceremony. He demands to know what is happening and is naturally shocked to hear that both his father and younger brother are dead. The servants report everything that happened, including how Dao Zongwang, who shockingly turned out to be a genius, still couldn't withstand our protagonist's strike. After venting his anger and cursing our protagonist, Zhang Baitao demands to know where he can find him. The servants explain that he was last seen heading toward Mount Luyang. If even Dao Zongwang didn't stand a chance, Zhang Baitao believes he can do nothing on his own and considers returning to the sect to train. But after thinking for a moment, he suddenly remembers Ni Donglu, the young master of Juyi Villa, one of the 6 great gangs. It turns out these great gangs are champions of justice, and the servant is certain that someone of their caliber would have no trouble dealing with our protagonist. And so, the next scene takes us to Juyi Villa. Inside, Ni Dongliu steps out to greet Zhang Beitao. It turns out they both came from the same Bashan sword sect. Zhang Beitao respectfully tells him that their master is doing well, but he apologizes because he is about to trouble him by asking for help. Hearing this, the young master wonders what the matter is and assures him that he will help as long as it is within his power. Just like that, both men take their seats and Zhang Beitao tells him everything that happened. In the end, Ni Donglu tells him he understands, but explains that they currently have too much on their plate. However, he promises to get back to him soon, prompting Zhang Beitao to thank him. Later that night, a servant presents Ni Donglu with a report containing the investigation into the Zhang family. He reads through the report and learns that the Zhang patriarch actually dared to steal from our protagonist, only to get himself killed. Because of this, the servant wonders if his young master will still agree to help Zhang Beitao. At first, Ni Donglu refuses to help, so the servant prepares to inform Zhang Beitao immediately. However, Ni Donglu stops him. He explains that what he meant is they cannot help Zhang Baitao directly, as it would damage the villa's reputation. However, he can still use his Bashan sword sect connections to assist him. Just like that, Zhang Baitao is invited to a banquet, where Ni Donglu introduces him as a disciple of the Bashan sword sect. In turn, he introduces the 3 men he has also invited. Judging from their backgrounds, they are anything but ordinary. Ni Donglu then explains that his fellow disciple is in a difficult situation, and since the villa is occupied with other matters, he asks them to lend a hand. Zhang Beitao also pleads with them for help, noting that he is even willing to share his sect resources as a token of gratitude. Hearing this, Lu Yuanhai smiles, adding that his escort agency will track down our protagonist for him. While they continue discussing the matter, Ni Donglu secretly thinks to himself how favorable this situation is. It turns out the 3 men have been pestering him for work, so this is the perfect opportunity to finally get some space. Meanwhile, we are taken to Luyang town. There, our protagonist is staying at an inn, thinking that the anomaly has finally appeared, meaning it is time to enter the ancient ruins. But his thoughts are interrupted when he notices Zhang Beitao and his group. Chu Shu immediately notices that each of them is in the innate realm, and they are not even trying to hide the fact that they intend to kill him. With that in mind, he tosses his cup at the red-haired man, Zhang Yu. Zhang Yu blocks the attack, and Chu Shu seizes the opportunity to make the first move, using the demonic sword technique known as One Qi pierces the sun and moon. Li Qingfeng does his best to block the strike. The blow is so heavy that it sends him sliding backward. Our protagonist wastes no time, using the opening to kill him with the very same demonic sword technique. Just like that, Li Qingfeng dies in less than 10 seconds. A cold chill runs down the brown-haired man's spine as he realizes the same thing. Meanwhile, Zhang Baitao's gaze sharpens as he realizes this is exactly why his father lost and why even Dao Zongwang never stood a chance. Despite knowing this, he still charges at our protagonist, declaring that he will kill him. Chu Shu simply smirks and decides to send him to reunite with the rest of his family. One strike is all it takes to send Zhang Beitao flying. Enduring the pain and seeing his reinforcements standing by, he reminds them of their promise to the young master of the villa. The men can only grit their teeth, knowing they cannot appear as oath-breakers in front of the young master of the villa. And just like that, they all charge at our protagonist at the same time. Chu Shu is overwhelmed, receiving relentless attacks that force him to focus solely on defense, because a single mistake will mean his end. Seeing him cornered, Zhang Beitao thinks he is finished and urges the others to press their advantage. As a result, our protagonist is sent flying, or rather he chooses to retreat. Of course, the 3 men have no intention of letting him escape. The moment Zhang Yu steps outside the inn, Chu Shu suddenly appears before him. Only then does Zhang Yu realize, far too late, that our protagonist was never trying to run away. Once again, Chu Shu uses his grappling technique, Great Forsaken Pawn. Just like that, Zhang Yu's life flashes before his eyes. Zhang Beitao watches in confusion, unable to understand what just happened. Our protagonist then comes at him with Azure Dragon Sleeve. This time, the strike is even more powerful than usual, allowing Chu Shu to slice straight through Zhang Beitao's sword. Zhang Beitao is injured in the process. Even then, Zhang Beitao still insists they continue the fight. However, Liu Yuanhai's expression reveals that he has an entirely different plan in mind. Sure enough, the man immediately bolts. Zhang Beitao is left gritting his teeth at the cowardly bastard. But in that very moment, our protagonist appears before him and grabs his fingers with his grappling technique. With that, Chu Shu finishes him off with a barrage of sword slashes, sending him to reunite with the rest of his family. Their battle draws the attention of the surrounding crowd, who are shocked to see a seemingly nameless swordsman effortlessly killing disciples from a prominent sword sect. It also catches the attention of a particular man wielding a trident, who is equally surprised by the sight. Meanwhile, the cowardly Liu Yuanhai continues running away and even dares to swing his sword at ordinary civilians. He nearly kills a woman in the process. The man with the trident immediately steps in, using his weapon to shatter Liu Yuanhai's sword. Liu Yuanhai is stunned to see the man. It seems he recognizes him, but before he can say anything, our protagonist suddenly appears behind him. With a single strike, Chu Shu kills him. Afterward, Chu Shu thanks the man for stepping in. The man tells him there is no need for thanks because our protagonist would have handled Liu Yuanhai even without his help. Curious, he asks why Chu Shu was being hunted by disciples from a sword sect. Chu Shu explains that he wiped out an entire family, and the sword sect disciples came seeking revenge. As he watches our protagonist compensate the inn for the damage caused during the battle, the man thinks to himself that Chu Shu is truly upright when it comes to settling grudges and showing gratitude. Because of this, he decides he wants to be friends. He invites our protagonist out for tea while introducing himself as Lu Fengxian from the western region of Yan. Chu Shu responds by introducing himself as well. However, deep down, he thinks to himself how lucky he is to encounter such a significant character from the game's storyline. He knows that Lu Fengxian will one day shake the world as the inheritor of the demon god.